Hello, and welcome to Tired Thinker, a quiet place for wandering thoughts and unhurried ideas. Tonight's gentle reflection is about something timeless, unseen, and endlessly shaping: thought itself. It's the reason stories are told, questions are asked, and connections spark in the silence between words. We barely notice it, and yet, thought guides everything, from history and philosophy to choices you made today, even the drift of your mind as you listen now. Before we meander deeper into this quiet space, I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it in your little corner of the world? It's strange, isn't it? A video about thought, and here we are, scattered across the globe, pausing together in this small, shared stillness. If you find these slow ideas soothing, or if you're simply resting your mind after a long day, I'd be grateful if you gave the video a like or gently subscribed. It helps this little channel reach others who might need a soft place to think too. Now, let's begin. A method of reasoning that is both powerful and simple is called first principles thinking. At its heart, it means breaking problems down into their most basic parts and rebuilding them from the ground up. Instead of copying what has been done before, you ask what is undeniably true and move forward from there. Most of us default to analogy. We say, this problem looks like that one, so I'll use the same solution. Analogy is quick, but it carries hidden assumptions. First principles thinking removes those assumptions. To see how it works, imagine a child asking why is the sky blue? Because of the atmosphere. Why does the atmosphere scatter light? Because of molecules. Why do molecules scatter light? Because of physics. This repeated questioning strips away surface answers until you reach the foundations. Aristotle described first principles as the base of knowledge, the points you cannot reduce further. In practice, it means pausing when you face a problem and asking, what do I know here that is unshakably true? Take space travel. Rockets were long seen as too costly for private companies. The analogy was simple. Rockets have always cost billions, so they always will. A first principles approach asks, what are rockets made of? Aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber. How much do those materials cost? Far less than the price of a finished rocket. That breakdown opened the door to cheaper and reusable rockets. This kind of thinking applies to ordinary life. Suppose you want to get in better shape. Copying someone's workout plan is reasoning by analogy. First principles asks, what does the body need? Movement that raises the heart rate, strength to support joints, and rest to recover. From that, you design a routine that fits you. Cooking shows the same contrast. Following a recipe is analogy, understanding that bread is flour, water, yeast, and salt, that gluten gives structure, that fermentation produces air, is first principles. Once you know the basics, you can adapt with freedom. It can also help when you feel stuck. Imagine you're short on time. Many people turn to planners and apps. But if you ask, what must I do each day? What actually matters? What wastes time? You cut to the essentials. Often the solution is not a new tool, but a change in priorities. This method often means asking why several times. Suppose your phone battery drains fast. Batteries wear out. Why? Because chemical reactions degrade. Why do they degrade? Because of heat, cycles, and material limits. By peeling back layers, you reach the cause and can consider real solutions. First principles also expose assumptions. Education is a clear case. Many assume learning requires a classroom with a teacher at the front. But education, at its core, is passing knowledge, practicing it, and receiving feedback. Those principles can be met in many ways: online, in groups, one-on-one, or alone. Even a chair can be rethought this way. Why 4 legs? Because chairs have always had them. But the principle is simpler. A chair must hold weight, balance, and provide comfort. Many shapes can meet that need: 3 legs, a pedestal, a suspended seat. Money, too, can be reduced. We treat it as coins, notes, or numbers, but at its base, it is trust. It allows people to exchange goods and services without direct barter. Once you see that, forms like digital currency make sense. They are not departures, but new ways of expressing the same principle. This doesn't mean analogy is useless. It saves time. You don't need to rediscover how to boil water. But when problems seem unsolvable, or when common answers fail, first principles help. They reveal that what we treat as fixed is often only a habit. So how do you practice it? Slow down. Write out the problem. Ask, what do I know for sure? What can't be reduced further? List those truths. Then rebuild from them. It may feel awkward at first, like dismantling a clock piece by piece, but it becomes natural with practice. Here's a simple exercise. Say you want to save money. The common advice is to cut coffee, cancel subscriptions, or install a budgeting app. These tips assume your life matches the writer's. First Principles asks, what is money for? To cover needs and wants. What are my needs? Food, shelter, safety. What are my wants? Everything else. With that clarity, you see where your money goes and what trade-offs you can make. Or take transportation. Many assume owning a car is necessary. But what does transportation need to do? Move you from one place to another reliably. That truth opens up other answers: biking, public transit, car sharing, or even staying home. The belief that a car is mandatory dissolves once you return to fundamentals. In every case, the pattern is the same. Strip away assumptions. Find the core truths. Build up from there. Think backward. Picture the outcome you want, then ask a blunt question. How could I fail? List the ways. Design your plan to avoid them. This is inversion. You begin from the failure point and trace back to the present. You do a pre-mortem instead of a post-mortem. Your mind becomes sharper when you allow it to look for failure. You name risks early and lower surprise. Start with a frame. Choose a goal and date. Write a short headline as if the failure already happened. The launch missed its window and lost user trust. I failed the exam. Our cafe ran out of cash. Then ask what caused it. Scope creep, bad estimates, weak feedback loops, no margin of safety. You only need a handful of causes, not a long list. Check them against base rates. What usually goes wrong in projects like this? Take a software release. The team wants low latency and a clean rollout. How could it fail? Load tests missed real traffic patterns. Rollback paths broke on a schema change. Feature flags flipped both cohorts at once. The on-call lacked a playbook. Once you name these, you can act. Use production-like data for tests. Add a canary deploy. Freeze schema changes. Write and test rollback plans. Put playbooks near the code. Set a stop loss. If latency spikes for 15 minutes, roll back. Inversion turns vague fear into clear safeguards. Hiring works the same way. You need a staff engineer. How could it fail? You focus on algorithm trivia. You get blinded by a famous company name. You ignore design skill or ownership. You rush because headcount expires. Flip each risk. Match interviews to the real job. Include system design on caching and trade-offs. Ask for a written sample. Review incident write-ups. Call references who saw their code in production. Use a rubric tied to outcomes. Set a time box, but do not lower the bar. Inversion guards against common hiring errors. For study, say you want an A in a hard class. How could you fail? You cram. You reread passively. You avoid weak areas. You skip sleep before the exam. Invert it. Use spaced practice. Test recall. Mix subjects. Solve problems from scratch. Track errors and review them. Run mock exams and set a target score. If you miss it, secure the basics instead of chasing everything. Pack the night before and sleep. This is not about grit. It is about dodging traps you already see. Training for a race offers more traps. How could you fail? Shin pain stops progress. You ramp mileage too fast. You skip strength work. Race gear causes blisters. Invert it. Follow the 10% rule. Mix paces. Do calf raises and single leg work. Test fuel and gear on long runs. Set exit rules for pain that changes form. Each rule removes a known failure mode. Money needs the same guardrails. You plan to save for a house. How could you fail? Lifestyle drift eats savings. An emergency wipes out cash. You chase hot tips. You lack automation. Invert this. Set auto transfers to savings. Build a 3-month buffer. Invest only in broad index funds. Create exit rules for risky assets. Write them down so you cannot improvise under stress. Protect your plan from yourself. A cafe with 12 months of runway is fragile. How could it fail? Rent outweighs foot traffic. Waste burns cash. The espresso machine breaks with no backup. Long lines drag reviews. Invert it. Run a pop-up first to test demand. Track conversion by hour. Secure spare parts and backup gear. Simplify the menu. Train queue flow. Keep runway reports updated. Each move buys survival. Public speaking is another field of risk. How could you fail? The deck runs long. The demo breaks. The mic dies. You lose people with jargon. Invert it. Cut slides to fit a strict time box. Record a demo as backup. Bring spare batteries. Use one idea per slide. Seed questions with a friend. Print a handout with keynotes. Respect the audience by removing predictable failures. Risk registers formalize this. Rate risks by probability and impact. Assign owners. Note triggers. Review weekly and ask, if we fail next month, what will be the cause? Update the list. This keeps inversion alive instead of one-off. Dependencies often sink plans. Ask who or what could stall progress. Plan slack. Split work so one block does not stop all work. Identify backup vendors. Cross-train people. Add health checks on upstream systems. Fewer single points mean fewer surprises. Language can shift too. When you hear a plan, ask for the loss function. What does a bad week look like? Which metric would warn early? Decide who monitors it and what they can do without a meeting. If you launch a new pricing page, a bad week is lower conversions with steady traffic. Define these in advance. Inversion sets tripwires instead of waiting for disaster. Small tests expose risks cheaply. Run an A/B test. Shadow write to a new database. Drill an incident response on a quiet day. Tape mock packaging to shelves and watch reactions. These probes uncover hidden weak spots before stakes rise. Your list of failure paths guides where to test. Process helps only when light. Daily stand-ups should highlight blocks. Kanban boards can show work limits. Burn charts reveal scope creep. Post-incident reviews list causes and fixes with owners. Pre-mortems should write, "We failed because," then list 5 causes. Always assign dates and names. Process is valuable when it sharpens risk visibility. Biases cloud judgment. Planning fallacy makes you too optimistic. Inversion forces buffers. Sunk cost keeps you in bad paths. Inversion sets exit rules. Confirmation bias hides warning signs. Inversion sets tripwires. Overconfidence blinds you to base rates. Inversion pulls in outside data. Each bias has a countermeasure when you plan for failure first. Communication also hides risks. Teams often think they agree, but don't. Inversion says surface assumptions. Define done. Define minimum viable. Decide who signs off. Assign metrics. Meeting notes lock this in. Simple tools near the work reduce drift. Habits matter too. Sleep is a goal. How could you fail? You scroll in bed. You drink caffeine late. You end work without closure, so the mind spins. Flip it. Charge your phone outside the room. Stop caffeine at noon. End the day with a 5-minute shutdown and tomorrow's top 3. Create a wind-down ritual. Small actions close off known failure points. Work relationships can falter. You want good one-on-ones with your manager. How could you fail? You bring only updates. You hide risks. You wait for reviews to ask for growth. You react defensively to feedback. Flip this. Bring a question to each meeting. Share risks early with context. Track goals openly. Treat feedback as data. This avoids surprises and builds trust. Crisis work demands inversion. A security team asks, "Where are the crown jewels? Which keys open them? Where are logs blind? What alerts get lost in noise?" Build defense in depth. Rotate keys. Add least privilege. Harden endpoints. Rehearse incident response with a clock. Do this before the breach. You hope you wasted your time. You know you did not. When you learn to think backward, you replace vague hope with concrete moves. You stop saying, "We'll try harder," and start saying, "We won't ship schema changes on Fridays." You still miss things you didn't foresee, but fewer things you could have foreseen. Over time, you build a library of failure modes for your craft. New people learn it fast. The team moves faster because traps are already cleared. Make it a weekly habit. Pick one goal. Write the failure headline. List the top causes. Choose which ones you can address now. Put them on the calendar. Share with a partner or team and ask what you missed. Close the loop the next week. This rhythm keeps inversion simple and alive. It turns foresight into a set of steps that keep you from falling into the same holes. Compounding works like a quiet engine. You put in effort today, and that effort continues to generate results tomorrow, next week, and next year. It does not ask for permission or announce itself. It builds in the background, and the payoff comes later. Many people chase short bursts of effort that pay once and then fade away. They spend an hour, get an hour's worth of outcome, and then stop. That cycle repeats, but it never adds up to much because nothing carries forward. A compounding mentality flips this approach. You look for activities where each unit of effort increases the base that will produce future returns. The work stacks on itself and creates a force that grows stronger over time. Take writing as an example. If you write an article today, it sits online. A year later, people still find it. Someone shares it. Search engines Pick it up. The words you wrote in a single afternoon continue to bring readers and create opportunities for years. Compare that with giving a live talk to 10 people. The talk may go well, but once it ends, it is over. The return stops. Both use effort, but only one multiplies with time. That difference defines a compounding activity. Consider learning a core skill. Suppose you spend 2 years learning programming. The learning curve feels steep and slow, but once you reach fluency, continue. You can use that knowledge for decades. Each project you build reinforces the skill, and the skill itself creates income, opportunities, and further learning. You invest hours up front, but the returns compound as long as you keep using the skill. Now compare that with spending those same hours memorizing trivia for a quiz show. The skill might impress people once, but it carries little forward momentum. One path compounds, the other burns out. Relationships also follow this pattern. A single conversation with a stranger may not matter, but if you invest in a relationship, if you show reliability, listen carefully, and help when you can, the trust grows. Years later, that same person may introduce you to a partner, hire you, or back your project. The initial time spent talking or helping created a seed. Over time, the seed grew into something bigger. Friendships, networks, and professional ties all compound if treated with care and consistency. Physical health works the same way. Exercise one time and you burn some calories. Nothing lasts. Exercise consistently for years and the benefits compound. Your heart grows stronger. Your body recovers faster. You avoid long-term disease. The return is not the single workout, but the growing baseline of health that each workout supports. Even small choices, like taking stairs or walking more, build into years of mobility. This compounding effect is subtle, but it adds up more than any burst of effort can. Money is the example most people know. Save and invest, and the growth compounds. The returns you earn generate more returns, and the cycle accelerates. But the same idea applies to almost any area of life. If you can identify activities where effort continues to pay off even after the effort stops, you unlock compounding. Reading, writing, coding, teaching, relationship building, and exercising all fit. They build a base that future work multiplies. Contrast this with what does not compound. Answering emails clears the inbox for a day. Completing chores resets the house for a week. Filing paperwork keeps you compliant for a moment. These tasks matter, but they end where they start. You trade time for output with no multiplier. The mistake comes when people fill their days with these tasks and never create space for compounding ones. They remain busy but stagnant. To shift into a compounding mentality, you ask a simple question before you act. Will this effort continue to work for me tomorrow? If the answer is no, you mark it as maintenance. If the answer is yes, you know it belongs in the compounding category. Over time, you want your calendar to tilt toward the activities in that second group. Even if they demand patience and discipline, the payoff is greater. Imagine 2 workers. The first spends every day handling urgent issues. The second spends part of each day building systems, documenting processes, and automating tasks. At the end of the month, both seem equal. But a year later, the second worker is free from many routine tasks because the systems handle them. Their effort from the past continues to deliver. The first worker still struggles with the same issues because none of their work carried forward. That difference is compounding at work. Think about personal projects. If you learn to cook, Each meal improves, your skill compounds, and soon you cook faster, cheaper, and healthier than before. If you never learn and always order takeout, each meal costs the same without improvement. The compounding path builds both skill and savings. The non-compounding path only fills one evening. Another scenario involves teaching. The first time you explain an idea, only one person benefits. If you record the explanation or write it down, that effort becomes a resource others can use. Over time, hundreds or thousands may learn from it. The same hour of explanation compounds into wide impact instead of vanishing after a single conversation. Even small habits demonstrate this effect. Reading 10 pages a day feels minor. In a month, that is a book. In a year, it is a dozen books. After 10 years, you carry the knowledge of a personal library. The habit compounds knowledge. Skipping that habit for television each night leaves nothing behind. The time passes, but no base builds. Patience plays a role. Compounding is slow at the start. The graph looks flat until it bends upward. Many people quit in the flat stage. They want immediate results. The key is to stay consistent long enough for the curve to show. If you plant seeds and dig them up each week to check progress, nothing grows. Compounding requires planting, watering, and waiting. When you apply this lens, you start to see life as a choice between activities that fade and activities that build. Most jobs, hobbies, and relationships contain both. You cannot avoid the tasks that fade. Bills still need payment. Dishes still need washing. Forms still need filling. But you can design your life so that a steady portion of your energy goes into compounding efforts. That shift makes the difference between feeling trapped on a treadmill and feeling carried forward by momentum. The power of compounding is not only in money or in obvious investments. It is in the choice to write instead of only talk, to build systems instead of only handle tasks, to exercise instead of only rest, to learn instead of only consume, and to nurture relationships instead of only meet people once. Each choice moves you toward returns that multiply. Each day of practice, each page of notes, each conversation of trust adds to a base that will keep working for you. Over years, this builds a life where effort multiplies instead of evaporates. Optionality means setting up life and work so you keep more than one path open. It does not mean chasing every chance or refusing to commit. It means building structures that let you shift when the world shifts. The more uncertain the future, the more valuable options become. You do not need to predict everything if you preserve the ability to adjust. Careers show this clearly. Many people climb a single ladder. If the ladder leans against the wrong wall, they get stuck. Optionality comes from transferable skills. A developer who knows only one framework is fragile. When that tool fades, so does demand. A developer who understands computer science, data modeling, and system design can work on many problems. Reputation also travels. A person known for clear thinking can switch industries more easily. Financial discipline adds another layer. Someone who saves and avoids lifestyle inflation can leave bad roles without panic. Someone who spends every dollar has no choice when things turn. Education is the same. A student who picks a narrow major places all weight on one outcome. A student who mixes a technical skill with writing or economics has more paths. They can work in industry, policy, or research. Even within study, optionality matters. If you rely only on lectures, you depend on one teaching style. If you mix books, projects, and peers, you keep fallback routes to learn. Adding statistics to programming opens doors across many fields. Optionality in learning is about creating future pivot points. Business strategy needs optionality to survive. A company with one product for one customer type is brittle. If demand falls, it struggles. A company that builds a platform can shift uses. Amazon began with books, but its core was logistics and infrastructure. That option led to selling everything, then to cloud services. Hardware firms can design modular products that adjust with demand. Supplier contracts show the same trade-off. A single long-term deal cuts costs but traps flexibility. Working with multiple suppliers costs more but allows quick change. Optionality in business is the right to move when conditions change. Finance makes optionality literal. Portfolio with one stock has no choices. A mix of cash, bonds, and equities gives flexibility to rebalance. Options contracts give the right, not the obligation, to act. Cash itself is an option. It lets you act when others cannot. Holding some liquidity costs yield but gives power in volatile times. In markets, optionality is a shield against total loss and a weapon when opportunity appears. Health shows why you need backups. A runner who only runs may perform well until injury strikes. A runner who also lifts, swims, and bikes has options. If one door closes, another stays open. Diets work the same way. Eating a narrow set of foods leaves you fragile to shortages or intolerance. Variety keeps resilience. Sleep habits too. If you can only sleep under one condition, travel or stress wrecks you. If you train multiple wind-down routines, you stay stable. Relationships reflect optionality. If your whole social world rests on one circle, conflict can cut you off. Building ties across hobbies, work, and community creates redundancy. Mentorship also works this way. Relying on one mentor risks inheriting their blind spots. Several mentors with different views give you more to choose from. Optionality here is not spreading thin. It is avoiding capture by one voice. Creative work thrives on it. A writer who only publishes in one outlet is stuck with its rules. If the outlet folds, their work disappears. Publishing across formats and platforms keeps distribution open. Musicians who depend on one label risk collapse if that label fails. Those who own their masters, stream, and play live can pivot. Optionality makes the work more durable. Technology offers lessons too. Teams that build tightly coupled systems reduce options. One change breaks all. Modular systems allow parts to be swapped. Cloud computing itself is optionality. Renting servers lets you scale up or down. You pay for the right to adapt. Multi-cloud setups extend this, though with cost. The point is not to spread everywhere, but to keep at least one fallback. Time management is a form of optionality. A full calendar leaves no space for chance. Empty blocks create room for surprise opportunities. Buffers cost in the short term, but protect in the long term. The same applies to commitments. Saying yes to everything locks you in. Saying yes with care leaves energy for what comes. Guarding time creates the option to act when others are overcommitted. Risk management depends on optionality. A startup can pour all capital into one big product or test several prototypes. The first path risks all. The second creates options. Farmers plant multiple crops for the same reason. Yield may be lower, but survival chances rise. Optionality here acts like insurance. You trade some efficiency for resilience. Information diet is another angle. Relying on one news source gives blind spots. Reading several sources gives early signals. Optionality in information means not being trapped in one frame. Even within a field, sampling different schools of thought gives you more lenses. It does not mean believing everything. It means keeping the ability to compare. Travel habits mirror this. Knowing only one route to work leaves you stuck in traffic. Knowing 3 routes keeps options. Families who know how to live in one setup are fragile. Those who learn to adapt to new cities or cultures gain skills that transfer. Comfort with uncertainty is itself a form of optionality. Even daily tools matter. Items with one narrow use trap you. Multi-use items keep doors open. A phone holds maps, payments, and communication. Yet relying only on one device creates a single point of failure. Redundancy, like spare keys, backup chargers, or printed maps, keeps options alive. Optionality here is about reducing dependence on one fragile point. Optionality is also a mindset. Some treat change as threat. They cling to one plan. Others treat change as normal and design for it. They keep small bets alive. A writer with drafts on many topics has material ready if interest shifts. A company that funds research it may not use today holds the option to act later. Optionality rewards those who prepare branches, not those who cling to one trunk. This does not mean scattering attention everywhere. It means focus with escape hatches. A stable job with savings offers more optionality than freelance chaos with none. A company with one strong product and a few prototypes has more options than one with endless unfinished work. The craft is in balancing focus with flexibility. An asymmetric bet is one where the potential gain is far larger than the potential loss. You risk something small for a chance at something much greater. This way of thinking changes how you see choices. It pushes you to ask, if I lose, how much does it matter? And if I win, how much could it change things? Many people avoid risk altogether, or they take it without weighing the payoff. An asynchronous bet is neither. It is not blind gambling. It is choosing when the scale tilts sharply in your favor. Think of spending an afternoon learning a new tool. The downside is only a few hours. The upside is that the tool could save you hundreds of hours across your career. If the tool proves useless, the loss is small. If it works, the return is enormous. That is what an asymmetric bet looks like. Money shows this pattern often. A modest investment in a project, a startup, or a book might fail. If it does, you lose that modest sum. But if it succeeds, the payoff can be many times what you put in. Investors build entire strategies on this logic. They accept many small losses because a single win can outweigh them all. Outside of money, the same logic applies. Networking is one example. Talking to a stranger risks a short, awkward moment, but that person might become a friend, a partner, or the link to an opportunity. The downside disappears in a day, while the upside could last a lifetime. Publishing your ideas online works the same way. The cost is low, some effort, and the chance of being ignored. But if the right person reads your work, it could open doors you never knew existed. Most avoid the chance because of small fears, and so they miss the possibility of large returns. Learning new skills also fits. You spend evenings practicing coding, speaking, or another language. You risk frustration and lost leisure time. But the upside is decades of better opportunities. The cost is controlled. The payoff can be life-changing. Health choices carry asymmetric qualities too. Quitting smoking brings short-term discomfort, but adds years of life. Exercise takes an hour, but the return is strength, mobility, and disease prevention for decades. The ratio of risk to reward makes the choice clear. Relationships reveal the same pattern. Asking someone out may sting if rejected, but the upside might be a lifelong partner. Reaching out to an old friend might fall flat, or it could revive a connection that changes your life. Small risk, large potential gain. Entrepreneurs rely on asymmetric bets. Launching a product online may cost weeks and a small budget. Most will fail, but one success can cover every loss and build a company. The logic works because the downside is limited, while the upside has no cap. Personal habits are no different. Reading one book costs a few hours. That book might give you an idea that shifts how you live for years. Journaling 10 minutes a day may feel trivial, yet the clarity and better decisions it brings compound far beyond the cost. The danger is mistaking ruinous risks for asymmetric bets. If the downside can wipe you out, it is not asymmetric, no matter the upside. Debt you cannot repay, or putting everything on one gamble does not fit. True asymmetric bets limit the cost to something survivable, even if repeated many times. The best way to use this mindset is to stack many of these bets. Most will not pay off, but the few that do will outweigh all the rest. Progress in careers, relationships, and personal growth often comes from one or two such outcomes. They feel like luck, but they come from placing enough small risks where the payoff was uncapped. History reflects the same. Scientific discoveries began as small experiments that could fail quietly. Most did. The few that worked changed the world. Writers published without knowing who might read. Many texts faded, but some shaped entire cultures. The cost of failure was low. The reward when it came was immeasurable. Living this way means asking what the worst case is and what the best case is. If the worst case is tolerable and the best case is transformative, it is worth considering. Many stop at fear of the downside and never measure the upside. But if you only act on safe paths with small rewards, you stay where you are. The asymmetric bet is how you move beyond. An abundance mindset means seeing value as something that can grow, not something fixed. A zero-sum view says if one person wins, another must lose. An abundance view says many situations allow everyone to gain if value is created. You stop asking only how to get your share and start asking how to expand the whole pie. Workplaces show the contrast. Two colleagues on a project may compete for credit. They hide information, progress slows, and trust fades. With an abundance mindset, they share insight and both improve. Shared knowledge speeds work, results are stronger, and recognition grows for everyone involved. Success is not limited to one slot. Markets show the same. A bakery might see other bakeries as enemies. If customers buy there, they do not buy here. But if the bakery raises quality and sparks demand for fresh bread, the whole neighborhood benefits. Coffee shops and other bakeries gain. The pie expands. Competition remains, but framed within shared growth. Leadership also reflects this. A scarcity view makes managers hoard authority, fearing loss of control. The result is bottlenecks. An abundance view shares responsibility. A manager who mentors a junior engineer spends time but gains leverage. The engineer delivers more, the team strengthens, and the whole group achieves more. Knowledge grows when shared. Negotiation often reveals mindset. A scarcity view sees every dollar as a tug-of-war. An abundance view looks for ways to enlarge the deal. Two companies arguing only about price may stall. But if one offers data access and the other distribution, both reach markets neither could alone. They earn more together than they could apart. Abundance means searching for hidden value, not just guarding turf. Innovation shows the payoff. A zero-sum approach treats patents and secrets as walls. An abundance view treats collaboration as fuel. Open-source software looks like giving value away, but the shared pool grows and everyone benefits. Companies build products on top of it. The internet itself was built on open protocols, proof that abundance creates more than any one owner could. Education is another example. A scarcity view says if one student excels, others fall behind. An abundance view says helping each other expands learning. Peer teaching deepens understanding. Group projects broaden perspectives, and no one loses knowledge by sharing it. Societies with more educated citizens prove the point. The pool of knowledge expands. Personal finance fits the pattern. Scarcity thinking clings to each dollar and envies others' gains. Abundance focuses on creating streams of value. Building skills, investing in businesses, or sharing financial knowledge does not deplete wealth. It increases capacity for the community to prosper. Others' success shows that value can be made, not that it is taken from you. Relationships thrive on abundance. A scarcity view of friendship leads to jealousy. If one friend meets new people, the other feels replaced. Abundance sees networks as expandable. Introducing two friends does not weaken your bond. It creates more ties that can enrich everyone. Social capital expands with use. Generosity builds goodwill that often circles back. Parenting can mirror this. Scarcity-driven parents hold tight, fearing kids will waste chances. Abundance-driven parents trust that opportunities multiply as children explore. Curiosity and resilience open new paths. Failure is not the end of chances, but the start of lessons. Growth is not one shot, it is a process. Sports look zero-sum, but abundance plays a role. A league with strong competition creates more value than one dominated by a single team. Fans enjoy uncertainty, revenues rise, players train harder, broadcasters profit. The pie grows even though games still have winners and losers. The system benefits as a whole. Daily life offers examples. A neighbor starts a community garden. Scarcity thinking says every tomato grown is one less bought at the store. Abundance thinking sees health, knowledge, and connection. The garden adds more than food. It builds community. Value is created where none existed before. At work, credit reveals mindset. Scarcity makes you hoard recognition. Abundance encourages giving credit. Acknowledging a colleague builds trust, which strengthens teams and increases results. The pool of recognition grows because the team achieves more. Hoarding shrinks it. Abundance changes how we view mistakes. Scarcity calls failure wasted effort. Abundance calls it progress. A failed startup still leaves behind skills, networks, and resilience. In places where second chances are common, founders often return stronger. Value exists even if it takes a new form. Science shows the same truth. Scarcity pits researchers against each other for grants. Abundance promotes data sharing. One lab's results spark another's insight. Open journals and collaboration accelerate discovery. Humanity gains more knowledge when research is pooled. Art benefits too. A musician promoting peers seems to give up attention, but the scene grows stronger. More fans attend, more venues open, and more opportunities appear. Scarcity says attention is finite. Abundance shows it grows with stronger art and communities. Ideas are another case. Scarcity hides them, fearing theft. Abundance shares them, trusting that execution and collaboration matter more. Sharing attracts partners and feedback, making ideas stronger. Most ideas improve with exposure, not secrecy. Abundance focuses on building, not guarding. At a personal level, abundance shows in generosity. Helping a colleague, mentoring a student, or supporting a project may look like giving value away, but it creates ties, goodwill, and future opportunities. This is not fantasy. Networks and trust operate this way. Each act starts ripples. Scarcity stops them before they spread. Abundance lets them flow, and often they return greater than what was given. Anti-fragility means more than survival. It means a system benefits from stress, noise, and change. The hit does not only bounce off, it makes the next hit easier. You see this in the body, in code, in markets, and in teams. A small stress hurts in the moment, but triggers a repair that overshoots. Next time, the same stress causes less harm. Over many cycles, strength rises. You can design for that. Take the body. Lift a weight that is hard but safe. Muscle fibers tear. The body repairs and adds more fibers. Bones read the load and lay down more mineral. Endurance work pushes the heart to adapt. You do not get stronger from rest alone. You get stronger from load and rest together. The same rule applies to systems you build. You want stress that teaches without breaking you. The dose must sit below ruin, but above comfort. Software shows the contrast. A fragile service crashes under a traffic spike. An anti-fragile service treats the spike as practice. It degrades gracefully, shedding non-essential features first. It uses rate limits and circuit breakers to protect core paths. Afterward, you analyze logs, patch weak spots, and improve. The next spike hurts less. Chaos engineering formalizes this. You break nodes on purpose. You watch recovery times drop. The stress becomes fertilizer. Supply chains tell the same story. A lean chain that depends on one vendor saves cost until a strike or storm hits. Then it collapses. An anti-fragile chain builds redundancy. You keep multiple vendors, buffer stock, and parallel routes. You test paths under live loads. When a shock comes, you reroute and learn. Next time, fewer gaps appear. Investing also rewards anti-fragile design. A portfolio tied to one forecast breaks when the world shifts. A barbell strategy is safer. Keep a base of safe assets. Place small, risky bets with capped loss and open upside. Most bets will fail. A few will cover all losses and more. You rebalance to lock in gains and keep discipline. The point is not perfect foresight, but payoff shapes that like disorder. Startups thrive under this mindset. They ship small and often. Each release meets real users. Bugs sting, but fixes come fast. Support tickets guide the next sprint. Telemetry turns pain into clear signals. Products evolve like immune systems. A team that hides from stress stays weak. A team that tests ideas in the wild grows stronger. Organizations can apply the same lens. If every decision flows to the top, stress piles up and stalls progress. Push decisions to the edge with guardrails. Local teams act fast, learn fast, and limit damage. Keep changes reversible and scoped. Run pre-mortems to find risks, and post-mortems without blame. The goal is not to avoid all errors, but to convert errors into data that upgrades the system. Design choices reinforce anti-fragility. Favor modular parts over monoliths. A module can fail without toppling the whole. Use loose coupling and allow substitution. Contain failure with per-tenant isolation, feature flags, and short cycles so bad ideas die small. Keep the system flexible, not rigid. Optionality is another lever. You want more ways to win than lose. Place many small bets instead of one large move. Keep exit costs low. In code, this means canary releases and experiments behind flags. In sales, pilot programs before full rollouts. In hiring, trial projects before contracts. Small losses are fine. Big wins matter. Information flow makes or breaks it. Anti-fragile systems surface weak signals early. They encourage raising issues and share clear incident reports. They track error budgets and leading indicators like queue depth or memory pressure. They learn before outages, not after. The feedback loop is the strength. Culture underpins it all. You need leaders with skin in the game who share both risk and reward. You need trust so people report near misses, not just disasters. Keep rules simple. Complexity looks clever, but breaks under pressure. Simple rules guide fast action when time is short. Personal systems can adopt this frame. Exposure to heat, cold, or hunger, done with care, creates resilience. Cross-training prevents injury. Calendars with buffer time flex under surprises. Shallow work is batched. Deep work is protected. A flexible schedule bends, not breaks. Learning itself grows from stress. Practice at the edge of skill. Add variability. Use retrieval practice, not rereading. Short quizzes and mistakes become memory hooks. If you never stumble, you are not stretching. Security teams use controlled stress. Red team drills simulate real breaches. Keys rotate, access stays minimal, and drills refine response. The goal is not walls that never fall, but a system that responds fast and improves each time. Stress must be sized. Too much load destroys. Too little creates weakness. Use dose, rest, and repeat. In engineering, this means load tests that reveal limits. In finance, position sizing and stop losses. In health, progressive overload with recovery. In teams, sustainable pace. You want to bend like a reed, not shatter like a brick. Measurement keeps you grounded. Track recovery time, not just uptime. Watch variance, not just averages. Averages hide cliffs. Test for correlated failures. Run game days to rehearse interlocks. Shorten runbooks with each incident so steps stay sharp. Diversity builds resilience. In code, different languages or platforms split risks. In portfolios, different assets move on separate drivers. In teams, varied skills and views widen your options. Uniform systems fail all at once. Documentation matters. Write design docs that note risks. Update them after incidents. Link code, dashboards, and runbooks so new members act with context. Speed without context is fragile. Speed with shared knowledge is not. Simple heuristics guide anti-fragile growth. Prefer reversible decisions. Ship small changes. Run fire drills. Move knowledge from people into systems. Pay down high-interest debt first. Automate toil that hides failure signals. Stop risky work during peak demand. Simple rules beat brittle plans. Incentives decide behavior. If raising risk brings punishment, people hide it. If leaders reward only quiet nights, teams fear change. Reward clear incident reports, quick recovery, and clean code deletion. Celebrate removing fragile parts. These acts shrink hidden risk. Cost structure matters. Fixed costs create breakpoints. Variable costs flex. Shift where you can. Auto-scaling absorbs spikes. On-demand capacity covers bursts, but core teams keep the knowledge. Reserve capacity is not waste. It prevents collapse. Often, anti-fragility comes from subtraction. Remove single points of failure. Kill unused features. Retire stale dependencies. Shorten queues. What remains gets more focus, testing, and real-world exposure. Fewer parts mean fewer ways to fail. Language shapes culture. Call incidents drills when stakes allow. Call postmortems learning reviews. Make it safe to say, I don't know. Normalize small experiments. Give tools clear names. Circuit breaker, bulkhead, throttle. Shared names allow shared action in storms. Over time, an anti-fragile system feels different. Teams expect stress and treat it as training. They keep margin, yet push the edge. They do not seek zero failure, but faster, wiser response. Each shock adds a note to the playbook. Each note lifts the baseline. The system grows because it gets hit and heals stronger. That is the aim. High-leverage thinking is about resisting the pull of every problem and instead choosing the decisions that will shape outcomes long after you make them. It is not doing more. It is focusing on the few choices that scale across time, people, and systems. Most of the daily noise, emails, quick fixes, urgent reactions, disappears within days. High-leverage thinking is about what lasts. A simple filter helps. If the impact of a decision will not last a year or extend beyond one person, it is not worth deep focus. Picture a manager who spends hours fixing formatting in slides each week. The work looks productive, but disappears as soon as the slides are forgotten. Another manager spends time creating a template for the whole team. That choice saves effort for years and across projects. The second manager uses leverage. The difference is not effort, but compounding effect. The same applies in personal life. Daily exercise looks small, but compounds into energy and health that shape every other decision. Chasing diet fads does not. One builds a foundation, the other fades. The question to ask: what will keep working even after I stop paying attention? Systems design shows leverage clearly. Fixing one bug helps for a day. Setting testing standards prevents hundreds of bugs. One scales, the other does not. Business works the same. Clear hiring rules save time in every future interview. Without them, the same debates return again and again. Communication carries leverage too. Leaders who answer every question create dependency. Leaders who teach principles equip their teams to solve future problems without them. The second path is slower up front, but saves time forever. The test is whether the action makes people stronger or keeps them reliant. Repeated friction is a signal of low leverage. If deadlines keep slipping, pushing harder solves only the moment. Redesigning the requirement process changes every future project. High-leverage fixes remove root causes instead of trimming symptoms. Some choices create path dependence. Hiring the wrong early team member can damage progress for years. Entering a weak market locks a company into struggle. These choices carry leverage because they shape everything after them. In contrast, the color of a logo can be reversed in a day. Attention belongs where reversal is costly. Education and money show the same pattern. Learning how to learn scales across life. Memorizing one fact does not. Building saving habits compounds over decades. Chasing short-term consumption disappears fast. High-leverage choices compound, low-leverage choices fade. High-leverage decisions often feel slow. Building culture, writing documentation, or investing in training all seem slower than immediate fixes. But the cost shrinks over time while the benefits multiply. One way to filter is to ask, will this decision matter in 5 years? If yes, it is worth the focus. Relationships also hold leverage. Trust built with colleagues or customers compounds across decades. A single strong relationship can open countless doors. Quick wins in arguments or transactions may feel good in the moment, but rarely last. The leveraged path is to invest in reputation and trust. Think of choices like a tree. Some actions are leaves, visible, short-lived, soon gone. Others are roots. They feed growth for years. The work is to keep asking, am I working on roots or leaves? To focus on leverage requires saying no often. Many tasks look urgent, but are not important. A useful test is whether today's effort reduces effort tomorrow. Automating a report may take hours once, but save hundreds later. Manually repeating the same task consumes energy without return. Leverage comes from building systems, not burning time. Strategy is leverage at scale. A company that says yes to every customer request dilutes itself. A company that focuses on one scalable problem builds an enduring edge. Each strategic decision determines whether effort compounds or spreads thin. In daily work, leverage appears in how you communicate and share. Writing one memo may take an hour, but can inform dozens. Explaining the same thing individually wastes hours. Training one person helps. Creating training material helps every new hire. Leverage comes from actions that scale and repeat. Tools and technology expand personal leverage. A simple script can erase repetitive work. A scheduling system frees hours for more important choices. But leverage comes from depth, not constant switching. Tools chosen with care compound. Chasing every new tool does not. High leverage thinkers avoid distraction. Many organizations reward visible busyness, tasks completed, meetings attended. But the quiet decisions that eliminate future problems carry far more weight. The leader who protects time for system design may look less busy, but creates the most value. The measure is not activity, but problems permanently removed. At its core, high leverage thinking is compounding. Each choice either compounds or decays. Most noise decays. A small set of structural decisions compound. The discipline is to invest energy only where compounding exists. This shift moves work from reaction to design, from chasing to building. Some actions echo for years. Others vanish by tomorrow. The challenge is to care only about the echoes. The 80-20 rule, also called the Pareto principle, is a simple way to see where results really come from. It says that in many situations, a small portion of inputs produces most of the outputs. Roughly 20% of causes drive 80% of effects. The numbers are not exact, but the pattern repeats. A minority of actions, clients, or problems create the majority of results, revenue, or failures. Seeing this helps you focus on leverage instead of spreading attention too thin. Take sales. In most businesses, a handful of clients bring in most revenue. The 80-20 rule explains why. If a salesperson works with 50 clients, perhaps 10 bring in the bulk of sales. The other 40 matter less. With this knowledge, the salesperson can decide to spend more time with the top 10, building deeper ties and finding ways to serve them better. That does not mean ignoring the rest. It means recognizing where the greatest impact lies and adjusting time. Without this focus, energy spreads evenly, but outcomes stay uneven. Customer service follows the same rule. Support tickets often show that a small number of issues cause most complaints. For example, A software company might find that 4 recurring bugs generate 70% of tickets. Fixing those bugs creates a bigger improvement than chasing dozens of rare problems. The principle is not just about efficiency. It is about tackling what actually matters most to users. Productivity is another area where 80-20 thinking helps. Most people fill their days with dozens of tasks, but usually a few tasks drive most of the results. Preparing the key client presentation may matter far more than clearing an inbox. Writing a chapter may matter more than organizing notes. If you identify the critical few, you avoid spending hours on the trivial many. The challenge is honesty. It feels satisfying to cross off small tasks, but they often add little value. The rule forces you to face the gap between effort and outcome. Health can be managed with the same principle. Many chase complex routines with dozens of rules. In reality, a few habits create most of the benefits. Regular exercise, sleep, and basic nutrition often drive the majority of health outcomes. Perfecting supplements or exotic diets contributes far less. This is not about ignoring details. It is about anchoring on the few moves that pay off most. Walking daily, sleeping 7 hours, and eating whole foods are the 20% habits that drive 80% of gains. In learning, the pattern repeats. When studying a subject, not all material is equal. A small set of concepts usually forms the foundation. Mastering them makes the rest easier. In language learning, for example, the most common words make up most daily speech. Focusing on those words gives faster progress than memorizing rare terms. In mathematics, understanding functions and algebra unlocks many other areas. The 80-20 view tells you to focus on core building blocks first. Relationships benefit from the same clarity. In a large network, only a handful of connections provide most support, trust, and opportunity. Spending time with those key people produces far more value than trying to keep every contact alive. This does not mean cutting others off. It means recognizing who matters most and investing accordingly. A person who spreads time thin across dozens of shallow ties may feel busy but gains little depth. A person who gives attention to the few who matter most builds a resilient circle. In business operations, managers often discover that a few processes create most bottlenecks. A warehouse might see that a small fraction of products cause most of the delays. Redesigning how those items are stored or shipped may improve the whole system. Similarly, in quality control, a few defects often cause most failures. Fixing them yields disproportionate improvements. The rule guides attention away from noise and toward signal. We can also see the principle in money management. In many households, a small number of expenses make up most spending. Rent, food, and transport dominate budgets. If you want to save more, trimming those areas works better than cutting coffee or snacks. In investing, a small number of holdings usually drive most returns. The challenge is to identify which ones and to avoid overreacting to small fluctuations elsewhere. Time use is another domain where 80-20 applies. Look back at a week and you may notice that a few hours created most of your progress. Maybe one meeting clarified the whole project. Maybe one focused writing session produced most of the report. The rest of the hours were filled with minor steps, many of them optional. Seeing this pattern helps you design weeks around the few blocks of time that matter most. Consider software engineering again. A team may spend months adding small features, but users may only value a few core functions. Surveys or usage logs often show that a minority of features drive most engagement. Improving those functions delivers more impact than expanding the long tail. Teams that ignore this risk wasting effort on details users barely notice. Teams that embrace it put strength where it counts. The principle shows up even in risk. A handful of threats often create most danger. In security, for example, a small number of weak points may open doors to most attacks. Patching them creates greater safety than spreading thin resources across dozens of unlikely risks. In project planning, a few dependencies often create most delays. If you guard those carefully, the whole schedule stabilizes. The 80-20 view can also change how you learn skills. Take playing guitar. A handful of chords cover most popular songs. Mastering them gives the ability to play widely. Hours spent on rare variations may add little. In cooking, a few techniques like chopping, sautéing, and roasting account for most meals. Focus there first. Later details can refine, but the basics drive most results. In daily habits, a few patterns shape much of life. Checking your phone late at night might ruin most of your sleep. Skipping breakfast or moving little during the day may drive most fatigue. Fixing those habits changes outcomes more than dozens of small tweaks. Awareness of the critical few saves energy and amplifies gains. The principle even applies in social problems. In many cities, a small set of streets or blocks account for most crime. Directing resources there creates outsized results. In healthcare, a minority of patients with chronic conditions account for most costs. Supporting them better relieves the system as a whole. In education, a small set of missing skills may cause most learning gaps. Focusing there closes much of the divide. When you apply the 80-20 lens, the goal is not to ignore the rest. It is to stop pretending that all inputs are equal. Some matter far more. The challenge is to identify them without guesswork. Data helps. Tracking sales, measuring usage, or logging time reveals where returns come from. Reflection helps too. Looking back on a week and asking what produced the most progress can highlight your 20%. A writer may find that most of their best work comes from writing in the morning. Those hours form the critical few. Protecting them matters more than trying to squeeze productivity from the evening. A teacher may find that a handful of activities spark most learning in class. Doubling down on them does more than adding new but less effective exercises. A doctor may see that a small group of habits, like smoking and diet, drive most patient problems. Addressing them creates the largest improvement in health. The 80-20 rule is not magic, but pattern recognition. It is a way to notice imbalance between effort and result. Many areas of life follow this skew. When you identify the vital few, you can make better use of time, money, and energy. The rest may still matter, but not nearly as much. Opportunity cost is the value of the best alternative you give up when you make a choice. Every decision carries this hidden price, whether you name it or not. Time, money, energy, these are scarce. When you use them for one purpose, you cannot use them for another. The cost is not only the effort you spend, but also the better outcome you could have gained. Thinking in terms of opportunity cost changes how you see trade-offs. It pushes you to ask not only what something costs in cash or effort, but also what you lose by not doing something else. Take time as an example. Suppose you spend an evening watching television. The direct cost is nothing more than the hours that pass. The opportunity cost is what you might have done instead: writing, reading, exercising, or building a relationship. None of those happened, because you chose the show. The lost benefit of those alternatives is the true price. This view does not mean you can never relax, but it forces you to be honest. Was the show the best use of those hours compared with what else you could have done? Money works the same way. Imagine you buy a new phone for $1,000. The cost is not only the phone. The opportunity cost is what else that $1,000 could have bought. It could have been an investment that grew over years. It could have been travel, training, or tools. You gave up those outcomes to hold the phone. If the phone brings more value than the best alternative, the choice was sound. If not, the real cost was higher than the price tag. Careers are built on opportunity cost. Say you stay in a job that pays less than your market value. The cost is not just your salary today, but the higher pay, learning, and network you give up by not moving. If you spend 2 years in a role that teaches you little, the opportunity cost is 2 years you could have spent growing skills that compound. By the time you notice, the gap may be large. Every role is not just a paycheck, but also a choice that blocks other paths. Education shows the same pattern. A person might spend years chasing a degree that offers low demand in the job market. The direct cost is tuition and time. The opportunity cost is the income, experience, and alternative skills they could have built instead. The reverse is also true. Time invested in learning high-value skills has an opportunity cost too. You give up leisure or immediate earnings. But if the skill yields decades of better pay and fulfillment, the trade is worth it. Measuring the alternatives makes the decision clear. Opportunity cost shows up in small daily choices as well. You can spend half an hour scrolling on your phone. The cost is not only that half hour. The cost is what you could have read, written, or built with it. You can buy a coffee each day. The cost is not $3. The cost is the savings you lose when those dollars could have compounded in an account over years. The numbers are small, but the principle scales. Every use of time and money blocks another use. In business, opportunity cost guides strategy. A company that puts capital into one project cannot put it into another. The opportunity cost of a new product line is the growth that might have come from investing deeper in the core. Leaders who ignore this build scattered portfolios. Leaders who weigh alternatives put resources where the return is highest. The same logic applies to startups. If you spend 6 months on features nobody needs, the opportunity cost is 6 months not spent on sales, customer feedback, or distribution. The burn rate makes the cost severe. Relationships also involve these trade-offs. Time spent with one group is time not spent with another. Energy given to shallow ties is energy not given to deep ones. The opportunity cost of weak bonds can be strong, lasting connections you never build. Even in family life, saying yes to every obligation can mean saying no to the moments that matter most. Seeing opportunity cost makes you careful about what you commit to. Health is shaped by these unseen costs too. Choosing to eat poorly or skip exercise has more than the direct effect. The opportunity cost is the better health, longer life, and greater energy you could have had. A late night at work may earn short-term gains, but the lost sleep cuts future focus and health. You do not just lose hours of rest. You lose the sharper mind you might have had the next day. The idea also applies to governments and policy. When a city spends billions on a stadium, the opportunity cost is the schools, transit, or healthcare it could have funded instead. When a government subsidizes one industry, the opportunity cost is innovation that might have bloomed in others. Every choice has a hidden shadow of what could have been done with the same resources. Ignoring that shadow leads to waste. Some people resist thinking this way. They say, "I already spent the money," or "I already gave the time." But sunk costs are gone. The future still holds choices. Opportunity cost asks what the next best use is, not what you regret. Clinging to bad investments because of sunk costs compounds the loss. Switching to a better path, even late, limits the hidden price you pay. A clear scenario makes this vivid. Two friends start businesses. One spends a year building features with no customer input. The other spends a year talking to users and selling simple versions early. At the end of the year, the first has a product nobody wants. The second has customers, revenue, and insight. The opportunity cost of the first friend's choice was the better progress they could have made. Both spent the same hours. Only one used them against the right alternative. The same is true in personal finance. If you keep cash idle, the opportunity cost is the return you miss from investment. If you buy a luxury car on credit, the opportunity cost is years of savings and compounding you traded for depreciation. Choices look different when you compare them to the best alternative instead of seeing them in isolation. Time magnifies these costs. Every hour spent today blocks another hour's potential. If you waste one evening, the cost may be small. If you waste years, the cost is massive. That is why opportunity cost links to compounding. Small decisions multiply over time. Reading one book may seem minor, but the opportunity cost of not reading over 10 years is hundreds of books not read, ideas not learned, and doors not opened. Opportunity cost also explains why saying no is powerful. Every yes consumes time and energy that might have gone to something better. Saying no protects your ability to choose higher value uses. Many people overcommit and fill their calendars with tasks that feel urgent but yield little. The opportunity cost is the deep work, relationships, and health they sacrifice. Awareness of this trade-off makes no an essential tool. This lens sharpens judgment. You stop asking only, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What am I giving up by doing this?" You stop measuring decisions only by surface costs and start measuring them by the best missed chance. That shift makes the hidden price visible. It helps you act with clarity. When you see opportunity cost everywhere, you realize that every decision counts twice. Once for what you choose, and once for what you forego. The skill is not to avoid spending or acting, but to weigh against the best alternative. The hidden cost is always there, whether you name it or not. Mental checklists turn hard choices into a set of small tests. They strip away noise and keep judgment anchored on facts. A checklist is not a script. It is a series of rules that make you look at the right details in the right order. You keep discretion, but you remove the swings that come from mood, pressure, or haste. A strong checklist has a trigger so you know when to use it, inputs so you know what data to gather, thresholds so you know what passes or fails, and veto items that stop the process outright. A brief record step lets you track outcomes and refine the rules over time. Investing shows the value. The trigger is a buy or sell decision. Inputs include business model, unit economics, balance sheet, valuation, and position size. One rule is circle of competence. If you cannot explain the revenue engine, cost drivers, and moat on one page, you pass. Another rule is margin of safety. If the gap between value and price is less than 25%, you pass. You check debt, customer concentration, and management record. Position size depends on operating risk. You set exit rules for thesis breaks. Imagine reviewing mental checklists turn hard choices into a set of small tests. They strip away noise and keep judgment anchored on facts. A checklist is not a script. It is a series of rules that make you look at the right details in the right order. You keep discretion, but you remove the swings that come from mood, pressure, or haste. A strong checklist has a trigger so you know when to use it, inputs so you know what data to gather, thresholds so you know what passes or fails, and veto items that stop the process outright. A brief record step lets you track outcomes and refine the rules over time. Investing shows the value. The trigger is a buy or sell decision. Inputs include business model, unit economics, balance sheet, valuation, and position size. One rule is circle of competence. If you cannot explain the revenue engine, cost drivers, and moat on one page, you pass. Another rule is margin of safety. If the gap between value and price is less than 25%, you pass. You check debt, customer concentration, and management record. Position size depends on operating risk. You set exit rules for thesis breaks. Imagine reviewing a small software firm. Subscriptions show 110% net dollar retention, 82% gross margin, modest debt, no major customer concentration, and a price 35% below value. Every gate clears, so you buy a small stake. Change the inputs, high leverage, risky customer mix, and the rules block you even if the story sounds good. You avoid a trap. Hiring benefits from the same logic. The trigger is an offer decision. Inputs are a scorecard with outcomes, must-have skills, and nice-to-haves. Rules demand evidence. Interview scores must link to examples. A work sample test mirrors the job. For a product manager, that means breaking down a messy problem, defining a metric, and drafting a test plan. If they cannot define a metric, you pass. Culture fit is tested in behavior, ownership, clarity, and feedback. References follow a fixed script. One veto is blame shifting without learning. With these rules, the process is fairer and results are more reliable. Product decisions need checklists too. The trigger is a new feature. Inputs are the problem statement, the North Star metric, target users, and current baseline. Rules check fit first. If the feature does not serve the core job to be done, you park it. Next, you check impact with a simple model. If the lift is unclear or tiny, you stop or test. A build rule requires a rollback plan, guardrails, and tracking. A time box rule removes features that fail to move metrics or harm stability. These gates keep the roadmap focused. Engineering has a clear use case. The trigger is deployment. Inputs are test cases, risk notes, and a runbook. Rules demand unit tests, integration checks, and CI. Deploys must sit behind feature flags when user flows are touched. Dashboards must show error rate and latency. Rollback must be one command. Canary rollout comes before wide release. If any gate fails, the deploy waits. This discipline looks rigid, but saves outages. Sales checklists protect time. The trigger is pursuing a lead. Inputs are role, urgency, budget, and timeline. Rules follow BANT. If the buyer lacks authority or pain, you nurture but avoid live hours. You define signals of high intent, such as trial milestones. A no-go rule blocks custom work outside the product path. This keeps the pipeline clean. Medicine proves the extreme case. A surgical checklist confirms patient, site, procedure, tools, and antibiotics. Minutes spent here prevent errors. The same spirit applies anywhere. Stakes are high and steps repeat. The value is enforcing observable facts, not hunches. Personal finance works better with rules. The trigger is a big purchase. Inputs are price, cash cushion, and ongoing costs. Rules set a waiting period, a cap as a % of savings, and a debt ban. You ask whether the purchase saves time, improves health, or grows income. If not, you pass or cut back. For recurring costs, you check annual totals to avoid leaks. Travel works the same way. A list of essentials, documents, money plans, and a shared itinerary reduces stress. Add a rule for a buffer day after return, and trips become smoother. Building a checklist starts with a post-mortem. Look at past wins and misses. Pull out signals that mattered and turn them into tests. Keep the list short, 5 to 10 rules per decision type. Separate must-pass gates from score items. Must-pass catches risk. Score items guide trade-offs. Write rules in plain language. Make thresholds clear. Good growth is vague. Net dollar retention above 110 is clear, is specific. When numbers are not possible, use crisp signals like 3 users who would pay to solve this problem. Store checklists where you work. A one-page template with trigger, inputs, rules, and record is enough. After each decision, mark what passed and failed and note the outcome. Review these logs on a set cadence. Drop rules that add no signal. Add rules that would have prevented pain. This cycle makes the checklist a compounding tool, not a static sheet. Avoid 2 traps. First is bloat. Long lists lead to fatigue and skipped steps. Second is worship. Rules do not replace thinking. Use them to frame judgment. When you break a rule for sound reasons, write them down and check later. If the decision holds, revise the checklist. If it fails, add a guard. Base rates add strength. Many new products slop. Many hires stumble. Many turnarounds fail. Use these odds to set thresholds. When base rates are weak, demand more evidence. When base rates are strong, relax only with care. Ownership matters too. A hiring checklist may belong to the manager. A product gate may belong to the head of product. A portfolio checklist may belong to the investor. Owners refine and update rules, not police them. Share checklists openly so people know the rules. Hidden gates create distrust. Teach checklists during onboarding. Show mock runs and past cases. Invite edits once context is clear. This builds buy-in and improves quality. Automate where it helps. A form that caps expected value is a way to make choices with numbers instead of hunches. You list possible outcomes, assign a probability to each, assign a value to each, multiply and add them up. The formula is simple. EV equals sigma probability times value. The values might be dollars, hours saved, or life years gained. You then compare options and choose the one with the highest payoff that fits your risk tolerance. This turns decisions from emotional to mathematical. Start with a lottery ticket. It costs $2 but pays back less than 2 on average. The EV is negative. Insurance flips the logic. The EV is also negative because the insurer builds in profit, but you buy it to avoid ruin. A small certain cost protects against a catastrophic one. EV is the backbone, but risk of ruin and cash flow also matter. Now compare job offers. Offer A pays $120,000 in salary. Offer B pays $80,000 plus 0.5% equity in a startup. You think the startup has a 10% chance to sell for $100 million within 4 years, and a 2% chance to sell for $1 billion. At sale, 0.5% of $100 million is $500,000, and 0.5% of $1 billion is $5 million. Expected equity is 0.10 times 500,000 plus 0.02 times 5 million equals $150,000. Spread across 4 years, that is about $37,500 per year. Add to salary and you get $117,500 in expected value, slightly below offer A. Adjust for vesting, dilution, and time value, and the gap widens. If you think the exit chances are higher, the EV rises. The math gives you clarity, even if it cannot give you certainty. Price an extended warranty the same way. A laptop costs $1,000. The warranty costs $150 and covers a $500 repair you estimate at a 10% chance. EV of coverage is 0.10 times $500 equals $50. You pay $150, so expected loss is $100. If a surprise $500 bill would crush your budget, you might still buy for peace of mind. EV guides the numbers. Your situation guides the choice. Businesses use EV to size projects. Suppose your baseline conversion rate is 3%. A redesign may raise it to 3.6%. You get 100,000 visitors monthly with $50 margin per sale. The lift equals 0.006 times 100,000 equals 600 extra orders, worth $30,000 per month. The redesign costs $50,000. Over a year, EV is $360,000 minus $50,000 equals $310,000. Even if the lift is half, you still earn $130,000. EV makes the decision plain. Medical choices demand the same math. Suppose treatment cuts 1-year mortality from 4% to 3%. Your expected survival gain is 1 percentage point. With 30 years life expectancy, that is 0.3 life years, or about 3.6 months. If side effects cost 0.1 life years in quality, the net gain is 0.2. Put this against cost and values. EV makes the trade-off visible. Sizing bets matters as much as picking them. 2 bets can have the same EV but different variance. High variance with a small bankroll leads to ruin. The Kelly criterion gives a way to size repeated bets. For a fair 1-to-1 bet with win probability P, the Kelly fraction is F equals 2P minus 1. If P equals 0.55, bet 10% of your bankroll. Many use half to reduce swings. The idea is simple. Bet small when your edge is small and protect your ability to keep playing. Probabilities themselves are estimates. Use ranges, not points. Ask for base rates. What share of startups like yours exit above $100 million? What is the distribution of conversion lifts? If data is scarce, use sensitivity checks. If a feature costs $100,000 and upside is $500,000, break-even success probability is 20%. If you think chances are 10%, EV is negative. If you think they are 40%, EV is positive with margin. The numbers force you to face assumptions. Sometimes the right move is to buy information. Suppose a $300,000 campaign could yield $1,200,000 in margin with 30% chance and 0 with 70%. EV is $60,000. You can run a $20,000 pilot that halves the risk of a false positive. That saves an expected $105,000 in wasted spend. Net EV of the pilot is $85,000. Pay for the pilot. You reduced uncertainty at a bargain. Time matters too. $1 today is worth more than $1 next year. Discount future payoffs to present value. If you expect $100,000 in 1 year and discount rate is 10%. Present value is about $90,900. Without discounting, you overstate long-term payoffs. Always fold time into EV. Not all value is money. You can score outcomes with utility to capture diminishing returns. The first $10,000 matters more than the 10th when money is tight. Pure EV in dollars can miss this. Log utility fits when avoiding ruin is key. Under log utility, bets that risk large drawdowns may look bad, even if dollar EV looks good. You reflect this by capping position size or adding stop-loss rules. Make EV a habit. Write options, outcomes, probabilities, and values. Push for base rates. Compute low, base, and high cases. Note the break-even probability. Decide what evidence would change your inputs and set triggers to stop or scale. The math structures your decision. Use EV for time. Suppose you have 5 tasks. One has a 50% chance to produce a breakthrough worth a month of progress. The rest are chores worth an hour each. Even at 20% chance, the breakthrough dominates in EV. This lens breaks the pull of small tasks that look productive but matter little. EV applies to safety. Suppose a plant can install sensors for $200,000. There is a 2% annual chance of an incident costing $10 million. Sensors cut risk in half. Expected savings are $100,000 per year. With a 5-year life and 10% discount rate, present value is $379,000. Net EV is $179,000. Install the sensors. Hiring can be viewed through EV. Candidate A delivers $200,000 steady output. Candidate B has a 60% chance to deliver $400,000 and 40% chance to deliver $50,000. EV is $260,000. If the team can absorb the risk, B is stronger. If a miss would derail work, A may still be wiser. EV shows value, but context shows whether you can afford the risk. Track forecasts. Record your probabilities and results. If your 70% calls win far less often, you are overconfident. If your 30% calls win more often, you are underconfident or making lopsided picks. Update with new evidence. Write it down to cut hindsight bias. Sunk costs do not matter. EV is forward-looking. Money or time spent already should not affect decisions unless it changes probabilities. If EV of continuing is worse than stopping, stop. If odds fall with new data, recalc and act. Future value, not past cost, is the guide. Stress test big bets. Ask what happens if your key input is wrong by half. Ask what happens if outcomes fail together. EV on paper can hide correlated risks. Diversify across bets that do not depend on the same outcome. The combined EV then has a better chance to show in real life. The habit is simple. Put numbers on outcomes, multiply by probabilities, and add. Compare choices, adjust for risk, time, and survival. Then act, record, and learn. The regret minimization framework is a simple test. You picture yourself at 80 years old, looking back on your life. You ask one question: will I regret not trying this? If the answer is yes, then you know what to do today. The framework cuts through noise. It strips away short-term fear, ego, and distraction. It shows you what matters when time has almost run out. Many decisions feel heavy in the moment. Fear of failure, embarrassment, or wasted effort can stop you, but when you project forward, those fears shrink. At 80, you will not care about small stumbles or awkward moments. What lingers is the thought of paths you never walked. Missed chances leave sharper marks than mistakes. The framework turns that truth into a guide for action. Think of someone with a dream to write a book. In the present, the person worries. What if no one reads it? What if critics mock it? What if it takes years and leads nowhere? These doubts carry weight day to day. But from the view of 80, the math changes. The regret of never writing the book will be heavier than the sting of failure. Even if the book is never published, the act of writing would matter. The memory of not even trying would hurt more. That realization clears the choice. Consider career moves. Many people stay in jobs that feel safe but dead. They fear leaving a steady income, disappointing others, or taking a step into the unknown. But picture yourself at 80. Will you regret staying in a role that drained you, or will you regret trying something new? The answer is almost always the latter. A failed attempt can still build skills and stories. A lifetime of staying put offers little but the thought of what could have been. The framework helps you act before the chance disappears. Relationships reveal the same pattern. Reaching out to someone you admire, confessing love, or apologizing for harm can all feel risky. You fear rejection, shame, or silence. But at 80, those fears look small. What lingers is regret for never saying the words. You will not remember the sting of an ignored message. You will remember the silence you kept. The framework pushes you toward the act that reduces that future regret. Entrepreneurs often use this lens. Starting a company carries risk. The odds of success may be low, and the failures can be public. But ask the 80-year-old question, will you regret not trying? Most people answer yes. Even if the venture fails, the attempt brings growth, learning, and resilience. The regret of never attempting would weigh heavier. This test led Jeff Bezos to leave Wall Street and start Amazon. He knew at 80 he would regret not trying more than he would regret failure. That decision was not about certainty. It was about regret. Travel offers a smaller but clear example. Many people put off trips, telling themselves they will go someday. Work feels urgent, money feels scarce, and the timing feels wrong. But picture yourself at 80. Will you regret missing the chance to see new places, meet new people, and widen your view of the world? The answer is almost always yes. Few people regret traveling. Many regret never leaving home. The framework also applies to learning. You may hesitate to start a new skill, thinking it's too late or too hard. But at 80, would you regret never trying to learn a language, play music, or master coding? Even a late start yields years of use. The regret of never starting is larger than the embarrassment of being a beginner. That thought makes the path clearer. Friendship follows the same pattern. Many people drift apart as life fills with obligations. Calls are postponed, visits are delayed. At 80, the regret of losing touch is heavy. You will not regret the awkwardness of reaching out. You will regret never doing it. The framework highlights the hidden cost of neglect. It turns vague intentions into action today. Even small daily choices can be tested. You might ask yourself whether you will regret not exercising, not reading, or not spending time with your children. The frame changes the weight of the choice. Skipping a workout feels harmless today. But at 80, the regret of years lost to poor health is huge. Scrolling on a phone feels fine now. But at 80, the regret of missed moments with family is sharp. The framework shifts perspective from comfort to meaning. The value of this test is that it cuts through short-term bias. Human minds are tuned to avoid loss, pain, and judgment. That focus can stop action even when the cost of inaction is higher. By pulling the lens far forward, you bypass those biases. You see the long arc, where failures shrink and absences expand. The framework is not about reckless risk. It is about choosing in favor of what will matter when time is almost gone. Imagine two paths. On one, you try, fail, and move on. On the other, you never try. At 80, the first path is a story you tell with pride. The second is a weight you carry with silence. The regret minimization framework makes the choice plain. Consider a student choosing between a safe major and one that excites them but feels less secure. In the moment, the safe choice wins. Parents approve. Jobs feel certain. But at 80, will they regret not pursuing what they loved? The likely answer is yes. Even if the path was harder, the attempt would feel true. The absence of trying will stand out more than the hardships of the attempt. Or, take someone debating whether to move abroad. The fears pile up: new culture, unknown language, lost comfort. But the framework clears the fog. At 80, will they regret not living in another country, even for a year? Almost always. Few regret exposure to the wider world. Many regret staying put. The framework can even guide day-to-day decisions. Say you hesitate to speak in a meeting, share an idea, or ask a question. The short-term fear is judgment. But ask, at 80, will I regret staying quiet? If the answer is yes, you speak. Most people regret silence more than awkward words. The framework encourages action in the moment. The test also guards against wasting years. If you find yourself in a situation that drains you, ask whether you will regret not changing. The job, the relationship, the project? If the answer is yes, then change is due. Waiting feels safer in the short term, but at 80, the wasted time becomes heavy. The framework shows that waiting can be the riskiest move of all. Not every choice requires this test. Some are trivial, but for paths that could shape your life, the question sharpens focus. It makes you measure choices against the perspective of a lifetime, not the haze of today. It strips away fear of failure and highlights fear of inaction. The power of the regret minimization framework is not in predicting outcomes, but in clarifying what matters. It forces you to align decisions with values you will respect when looking back. It shows you that small embarrassments fade, while untried chances last as regret. You will fail at times. You will stumble. But if you take the chances you know you would regret missing, you build a life with fewer shadows. This is how you use the question. At 80, will I regret not trying this? If the answer is yes, then act. If the answer is no, then let it pass. The framework does not remove risk, but makes the trade-off clear. It reminds you that the heaviest regrets come not from what you did, but from what you left undone. The circle of competence is a reminder that skill is not universal. You may be sharp in one field and clumsy in another. Staying inside your circle is discipline. It is not about avoiding risk, but about placing bets where you understand the rules, players, and odds. The world is too wide to master everything, but you do not need to. You only need to know where you stand, how far your circle reaches, and when you are outside of it. In investing, the principle is common. Warren Buffett says he only invests in businesses he understands. If a company's economics or industry fall outside his circle, he passes. He would rather miss than act without clarity. Charlie Munger adds that it does not matter how big your circle is, only that you know where the edge lies. Many people lose money not from lack of intelligence, but from straying outside their circle without realizing it. Picture an engineer asked to judge biotech startups. She may be brilliant in software, but know little about drug trials or regulation. Her guesses would be flimsy. If she admitted that biotech was outside her circle, she would avoid mistakes. The circle is about humility as much as knowledge. You avoid arrogance by drawing a line between what you know and what you do not. Inside the circle, you have an edge. Outside, you do not. The same applies to careers. A young professional may want to jump into a trendy industry. Without knowledge, they misjudge paths or overrate their fit. Someone with years in logistics knows contracts, supply chains, and bottlenecks. That is a valuable circle. Switching into luxury fashion without study shrinks their advantage. This does not mean you must stay forever in one place. It means expansion should be deliberate. You study, ask questions, and shadow until the circle grows in that direction. Founders show this well. Many succeed when they build in fields they know. A nurse may start a health tech tool because she has lived the workflow. Her insight spots problems outsiders miss. Contrast this with founders chasing fields they barely understand. They may build trendy products that fail because they miss crucial details. The circle of competence keeps you grounded. You know when your insight is real and when you are guessing. The idea also helps in daily life. Say you are asked for advice on real estate in a city you have never lived in. You can guess, but your advice will be thin. Admitting that it is outside your circle and pointing to someone with local knowledge is wiser. Too often, people pretend to know. They give opinions outside their competence and lose trust. Saying, "I don't know enough about that," builds credibility. People trust you more when they know you draw boundaries. Leaders must know their own circle and respect those of their teams. A leader who believes they can judge every technical detail may overstep and make poor calls. A better approach is to let subject experts decide within their circle. A security engineer should decide on cryptography and a designer on user flow. The leader integrates. Teams work better when boundaries are respected. Circles grow with effort. A finance student may begin with no grasp of derivatives. Years of practice and mistakes can bring them inside the circle. Expansion is earned, not assumed. Many people think intelligence means instant understanding. They confuse speed with depth. The circle insists on depth before action. Take a clear case. Suppose you are skilled at analyzing consumer tech companies. You understand app stores, user growth, and monetization. That is your circle. If a new social media app appears, you can analyze it. If a biotech firm comes along, you admit it is outside. You might still invest, but only by relying on someone else's circle. Delegation respects the principle. You do not pretend your circle covers what it does not. Poker makes the lesson vivid. A skilled player knows when they understand a table. Some players are weak, patterns are clear, and odds are good. That is inside the circle. At other tables, the players are sharper and patterns unclear. A disciplined player leaves rather than burn chips outside their competence. Life offers many such tables. You want to sit where you have an edge and walk away where you do not. The circle matters in teaching and writing. A teacher who knows physics deeply but not biology should focus on physics. Pretending equal competence harms students. Writers who stick to subjects they know produce sharper work. Writers who drift into topics they barely understand fill pages with vague claims. Readers sense the difference. The circle protects both credibility and trust. In personal life, the circle guards against errors. People often chase diets or supplements without medical training. They act outside their circle, guided by fads. Recognizing that health science is outside your circle should lead you to consult professionals. The same applies to law or taxes. You may be competent in your trade, but not in legal code. Knowing that limit saves you from costly mistakes. You stay inside your circle and bring in others for theirs. The circle is not a cage. If you never push the edge, you never grow. Expansion should be careful. Learn before acting. Test knowledge in small ways before risking big stakes. A new investor might start by analyzing industries they know as consumers. Over time, study lets them branch into areas they do not use daily. The circle expands with patience. The danger lies in leaping outside without the work. The rule is not never leave, it is earn your way out. Partnerships thrive when circles are clear. One partner may know finance, the other technology. Together, their joint circle is larger, but only if they respect each other's edges. If the finance partner makes engineering calls, errors follow. If the engineer makes legal calls, the same. Clear respect for boundaries makes strong teams. The circle of competence is a guide to realism. It forces you to admit what you know, what you do not know, and where you must learn. It pushes you to play games where you have an edge and walk away from games where you do not. It rewards humility, focus, and steady growth. It punishes arrogance and overreach. The discipline is not about making the circle vast, but about knowing its shape and respecting its edge. Red teaming is a way to test your thinking by taking the other side on purpose. You set up an opponent whose job is to break your plan. You invite pushback before the world gives it to you. The aim is not debate for its own sake. The aim is to expose hidden assumptions, weak links, and blind spots while there is still time to adjust. Done well, red teaming lowers risk, raises clarity, and sharpens execution. Most teams fall into traps. Confirmation bias makes you seek proof you are right. Groupthink keeps people quiet when they see flaws. Sunk cost pulls you toward bad choices because you have already invested in them. A formal red team cuts through these forces. It makes dissent a role instead of a social risk. The work starts with scope. Name the plan you want to test. State its goal in a sentence. List assumptions in plain language. Draw boundaries around what the red team can challenge. A clear brief keeps the effort sharp. The red team should be independent, familiar with the domain, but not wedded to the current path. One person leads, another records findings, and a facilitator manages time. The blue team defends the plan. An umpire or sponsor decides when there is a stalemate. Rules matter. Attack ideas, not people. Keep to facts. Time box the session. Record assumptions as they surface. Agree on how to rate risk by likelihood, impact, and detectability. Decide in advance what done means, whether that is a list of changes, a go-no-go call, or a test plan. Without rules, red teaming devolves into theater or argument. Simple tools keep the process grounded. A premortem imagines the plan has failed a year from now and asks why. Inversion flips the view. How would a smart opponent defeat us? Attack trees map failure paths. Base rate checks compare forecasts to real-world data from similar efforts. Numbers beat vague words like rare or likely. Writing math on the board makes it open to challenge. Scenarios bring this to life. Imagine a startup about to launch a new checkout flow. The blue team claims conversions will rise. The red team asks, what happens if the payment processor times out, if a browser update breaks a script, or if a card network flags transactions? They demand proof of fallbacks, circuit breakers, and alerting. They push for a live game day to test recovery. The aim is not fear, but resilience. Consider a security program. The blue team reports phishing is under control. The red team sends crafted emails with real project names and lookalike domains. They measure click-through, credential entry, and response speed. They do not shame people. They feed fixes into training, MFA rollout, and mail filters, then rerun the test. Strategy also benefits. a company wants to enter a new market with low prices. The red team plays the incumbent, testing responses like price cuts, bundling, exclusive deals, or lobbying regulators. They compare unit economics, cash runway, and service levels under stress. The discussion shifts from optimism to modeled outcomes. Data science fits too. A model works on test sets but may fail in production. The red team shifts distributions, injects noise, removes features, and pushes latency. They report tail percentiles, not just averages. They check fairness across groups and test rollback plans if performance slips. Guardrails replace assumptions. Red teaming applies outside organizations. An engineer considering management can run their own session. The upside is scope and pay. The downside is lost technical depth, politics, and time away from family. Instead of guessing, they test by mentoring, leading a project, and measuring results. The internal red team asks for evidence. The choice comes from data, not dreams. The payoff comes only if findings lead to change. Assign owners and deadlines. Link fixes to goals. Shrink scope to limit blast radius. Run canaries and feature flags. Reports without follow-up add no value. There are failure modes. Some teams treat red teaming as performance art, tossing a few gotchas and stopping. Others slip into hostility, where being right matters more than helping. Sessions drift when scope is unclear, or the process is weaponized to stall rivals. Tight scope, clear rules, and sponsor oversight prevent these traps. Language shapes culture. Speak plainly. Say we do not know when you don't. Say this fails if X, rather than this might be suboptimal. Shared terms, circuit breaker, bulkhead, canary, error budget, turn ideas into tools that teams can use on the spot. Cadence matters. Run red team reviews before large spends, launches, or risky changes. Hold short weekly challenge hours for smaller issues. Rotate members to avoid stale thinking. Teach new hires how to question with respect. Safety underpins the practice. People must be free to raise risks without punishment. Leaders model it by thanking those who find problems, sharing their own errors, and separating the person from the plan. Today, you defend. Tomorrow, you attack. The role shifts, not the identity. Numbers belong in the room. Write down risk likelihoods and impacts. Use ranges and confidence levels. Compare to base rates. Run expected value math on a whiteboard. Keep it simple enough for anyone to check. Numbers cut through vague talk and force clarity. Red teaming pairs with postmortems. After incidents, map how the system made error easy. Hunt for sharp edges in process and incentives. Look for nudges that would have changed the path. Feed findings back into the next red team session so errors don't repeat. There is a cost. Red teaming takes time and energy. It can slow launches, but the savings in avoided waste, outages, and missed goals outweigh the cost. Scale the effort to the stakes. 1 hour for a feature, 2 days for a product line, a live fire for a brand. Ownership still rests with the blue team. The red team builds the best opposing case. The sponsor weighs both sides and decides. Advice is not veto. Critique is not command. The outcome is a stronger decision with a record of assumptions and risks. Kept alive, this practice changes how plans are written. Assumptions are explicit. Risks have owners. Rollbacks exist. Alerts are tuned. Teams expect stress and prepare for it. They know how a rival would strike and how they would respond. The greatest gift of red teaming is not the list of flaws it finds, but the habit of asking better questions before the world asks them for you. Second-order thinking is the practice of asking not only what will happen next, but what will happen after that. Most people stop at first-order consequences. They see the immediate effect, react, and move on. Second-order thinkers trace ripples that spread beyond the first splash. They look for delayed effects, feedback loops, and trade-offs that show up months or years later. This habit creates an edge because many choices that look smart in the short run collapse under long-term costs. Take a business cutting prices to win market share. The first-order effect is simple. More customers buy, sales rise, and managers celebrate. The second-order effects tell another story. Margins shrink, costs get cut, service quality drops, employees leave, and brand value erodes. Competitors match the lower price, removing the edge. What looked like victory turns into a trap. A second-order thinker would have asked what happens when the price war begins and whether the gains hold. Hiring decisions show the same pattern. Filling a role fast solves today's workload problem. The first-order effect is relief. But if the candidate lacks the right skills, projects stall, morale dips, and stronger teammates leave. The second-order effects of rushing a hire outweigh the short-term fix. Holding the line and waiting for the right candidate often proves better, even if the short run feels heavier. City planning offers another lesson. Expanding roads seems like a fix. First-order logic says more lanes mean less traffic, yet second-order effects include induced demand. More people drive because it feels easier, so congestion returns worse than before. Maintenance costs rise, emissions climb, and the city is stuck. The second-order approach might invest in transit or zoning that reduces car dependence from the start. Investing decisions follow the same logic. A company posts record profits and the stock spikes. First-order thinkers buy. But second-order analysis asks what drove the profits. If they came from one-off cost cuts, earnings may collapse. If they came from durable share gains or reinvestment discipline, growth may compound. The headline looks the same, but the second step tells you which outcome lasts. Policy decisions highlight the gap. Subsidizing fossil fuels lowers energy prices in the short run. That feels good. But the second-order effects include higher consumption, more emissions, and health costs. What looks generous now becomes a hidden tax on the future. A second-order alternative, investment in renewables, looks expensive early, but lowers risks later. Education shows the contrast. Teaching for memorization lifts test scores quickly. First-order results look good, but second-order effects are weaker problem-solving and adaptability. Teaching how to learn may look slower, yet it produces resilience across a lifetime. Ripple effects matter more than the quick score bump. Personal finance is full of these traps. Using debt to buy luxuries gives immediate pleasure. That is the first-order effect. The second-order effect is years of interest that restrict freedom. Saving and investing feel slow, but the second-order effect is compounding wealth and more choices later. Many bad financial calls come from ignoring the second step and focusing only on now. Health decisions mirror this. Skipping exercise saves an hour today. The first-order effect is extra time. The second-order effect is declining energy and medical costs later. Fast food feels easy and tasty. The second-order effect is weight gain and chronic risk. Second-order thinkers account for those hidden costs before choosing the short-term reward. Relationships follow the same rule. Avoiding a hard talk keeps the peace today. That is the first-order effect. But resentment builds and conflict later explodes. Having the talk early may sting, but it prevents bigger damage. Parenting shows this too. Giving into a tantrum stops noise now. The second-order effect is teaching that tantrums work, fueling worse behavior. Looking past the first step helps guide better choices. Often, second-order thinking reveals counterintuitive truths. Growing too fast can break systems. Leaders who stay too available can weaken teams by erasing accountability. Well-meant policies can trap people in dependency. The first visible effect is rarely the full story. The ripples matter more than the splash. The discipline requires questions. What happens next? And after that? Who benefits? Who pays? And what if everyone acts this way? What hidden costs emerge later? These questions stretch time horizons and widen the frame. Second-order effects are often delayed or fall on people not in the room, which is why they get ignored. Consider technology adoption. A company installs AI tools to cut labor costs. First-order effect: payroll drops. Second-order effects: morale falls. Skilled staff leave. Regulators react, and competitors adopt the same tools, erasing the edge. What looks like efficiency may weaken the firm in the long run. Governments face the same trap in monetary policy. Cutting rates spurs growth. That is the first-order effect. But the second-order effects are bubbles and financial instability. Raising rates cools inflation, but risks recession. Each choice sends ripples through years. Leaders who stop at first-order logic fuel cycles of boom and bust. Strategy shows it too. A startup may chase rapid expansion. The first-order effect is market share, but second-order effects include cultural dilution, operational chaos, and higher burn. A slower path may build stronger roots. Pricing discounts tell the same story. The first-order effect is adoption. The second-order effect is conditioning customers to expect discounts, eroding long-term power. Even small daily habits apply. Procrastination brings relief now. The second-order effect is stress and weak output later. Starting early feels harder now, but lowers stress and improves results. Many routine choices follow this same pattern of immediate comfort versus deferred cost. Making second-order thinking practical means writing consequences 2 steps deep. For each choice, note the immediate effect and then ask what likely follows. Use history as a guide. A rushed hire, a price war, or a subsidy almost never ends at the first gain. Patterns repeat, and those who see them avoid the trap. Second-order thinking requires patience. The world rewards speed and quick wins, so pausing to trace ripples is rare. But that rarity makes the skill valuable. When most people stop at the first step, the one who sees the second has an advantage. They avoid decay, invest in what compounds, and act with longer perspective. The habit is not brilliance, but discipline, a willingness to keep asking, and then what? Network effects describe a condition where a product or service becomes more valuable as more people use it. Each new participant adds value, not just for themselves, but for every other participant. The effect compounds. A product that starts out weak can turn dominant if it crosses a threshold where the network feeds itself. One that never reaches that point may vanish no matter how strong its design. Success often lies in whether the network grows strong enough to lock in value. The telephone is the classic case. One phone is useless. 2 phones create one connection. 10 phones create 45 possible pairs. Each new user expands the system's reach. No single phone matters, but the network becomes indispensable. That simple math shaped the spread of telecommunications for over a century. Social media shows a modern version. Facebook was not better designed than rivals in its early days, but as more students joined, the value of joining rose. People wanted to connect with classmates, then alumni, then friends across schools. Each new user made it harder to ignore. Once the network reached a tipping point, competitors with better features could not break in. The size and density of the network mattered more than design. Marketplaces follow the same logic. Buyers want to go where sellers are. Sellers want to go where buyers are. Once that cycle compounds, late entrants struggle. A new marketplace may offer slicker design, but without a dense network of both sides, it feels empty. That emptiness is what makes bootstrapping marketplaces so hard, and why many fail before scale. Ride-sharing shows the challenge. Uber and Lyft needed enough riders to attract drivers, and enough drivers to attract riders. Early on, each market was fragile. If a rider found no car nearby, they quit. If a driver found no rides, they stopped driving. Once density grew, wait times dropped and reliability improved. The network effect kicked in and growth compounded. Competitors who came later could not match the density. Operating systems illustrate how ecosystems grow. Windows dominated, not always because of quality, but because it had the most developers. Developers wrote for Windows because users were there. Users bought Windows because software was there. This cycle reinforced itself. Apple only broke through by shifting the field to mobile. Today, app stores for iOS and Android show the same pattern. Users choose phones for apps, and developers choose platforms for users. Payment networks like Visa and MasterCard also rely on this effect. Merchants want to accept cards customers carry. Customers want cards accepted in many places. As adoption grew, each side pulled the other. New entrants face steep hurdles because they must recruit both at once. Without one side, the other will not come. The incumbents have moats built from the sheer weight of the network. Network effects are not limited to technology. Language itself is a network. The more people who speak English, the more useful it is to learn. Standards work the same way. A file format gains value once widely adopted. Competing formats may be superior, but fail because the standards network is too strong. The strength of a network effect depends on how much value each new user adds. Messaging apps add direct value with each new friend. Marketplaces gain value as each buyer slightly improves seller odds. But value can also diminish as networks grow. A small group chat may be useful, but a giant one can be noisy. Design choices determine whether growth strengthens or weakens the network. Bootstrapping is always the hardest stage. Before density, the network feels empty. Users see little reason to join. Companies often seed the network. Marketplaces subsidize one side, paying sellers or discounting buyers. Social platforms target tight groups like colleges. Ride-sharing firms paid drivers to idle and gave riders discounts. These tactics buy time until organic growth takes over. Networks can also collapse. A social network is valuable while your friends stay. If many leave, the value drops fast. That is why retention matters. Habits and ties make leaving costly. Sometimes the network effect itself is the switching cost. People stay because others do. Once scaled, network effects make a business defensible but not invincible. Competitors can attack by shifting the form. Facebook overtook MySpace by focusing on real identity. WhatsApp beat SMS with free global messaging. TikTok grew by emphasizing algorithmic content over friend graphs. Each shift built a new network with a new center. Negative network effects exist too. A service may lose value if too many people use it. Roads clog with traffic. Forums degrade when spam rises. Dating apps can overwhelm when density turns into noise. Managing quality is as important as scale. A growing network that deteriorates may collapse under its own weight. Not all growth is a network effect. A restaurant may get busier, but food does not gain value because more people eat there. The line may even reduce it. Distinguishing between brand, scale economies, and true network effects is critical. Network effects are special because they create compounding value through connections. They build loops that are hard to copy. Investors and builders must ask early, does each new user add value for the next? If yes, the business may scale defensively. If no, growth will rely on marketing or product features. The idea also applies to individuals. Reputation is a personal network effect. The more people you help, the more introductions and opportunities come back to you. Each new tie adds value not only to you, but to others in your network. Careers compound through these effects. Contribution builds a professional network that reinforces itself. Network effects explain why some companies dominate and others never gain traction. They show why standards and platforms lock in. They also show why building them is slow, fragile, and requires design. The core idea holds. The value of the product grows as the network grows. Once the flywheel spins, it becomes one of the strongest forces in business. Scalability bias is the tendency to favor projects, businesses, or strategies that can grow without effort rising in the same proportion. A scalable venture can serve 10 times the customers without 10 times the cost or labor. By contrast, a non-scalable venture grows only by adding resources linearly. Many people underestimate how powerful this difference is. They spend years on paths where effort and rewards stay locked together, when they could be building systems that multiply output with each unit of input. Recognizing scalability bias pushes you toward models where growth compounds. A consulting firm illustrates the point. A consultant bills by the hour. The only way to earn more is to raise rates or work more hours. If you double clients, you must double staff. Growth stays linear. Compare that to software. Once you build the product, you can sell it to 100 or 1 million users with minimal added cost. Each extra customer increases revenue while cost per customer falls. The model scales. The contrast between services and products explains why software firms grow to massive size, while consulting firms rarely do. Books offer another example. Writing a book takes time and energy, but once written, it can be sold endlessly. Each additional reader adds revenue without requiring new effort from the author. Teaching a course in person, by contrast, requires repeating the same work each time. Recording the course once and distributing it online converts a non-scalable activity into a scalable one. The same knowledge spreads with less repeated labor. Marketplaces show how scalability bias rewards the right design. The small store can only serve as many customers as fit in the shop. An online marketplace like Amazon scales far beyond physical constraints. Sellers handle logistics, buyers find goods through algorithms, and the platform earns from transactions. The infrastructure cost grows, but not in direct proportion to volume. Once the system is in place, scaling to millions of transactions becomes feasible. The bias towards scalable platforms explains why they dominate retail. Scalability is not only about technology. Consider a restaurant. A single location can serve only so many tables. To grow, it must open new locations, train staff, and manage supply chains. The effort is heavy, but if the restaurant develops a franchise model, it scales through partners. Each new franchise adds revenue while central effort grows more slowly. Systems like branding, recipes, and supply networks scale better than direct labor. The difference is not in food, but in structure. In finance, the same rule applies. A trader making calls one by one cannot scale. A systematic fund that codes strategies into algorithms can. Once the code runs, each extra dollar under management earns returns without proportional new effort. Scaling from 10 million to a billion requires infrastructure, but the marginal work per dollar shrinks. The system does the heavy lifting. That is scalability bias in practice. Lean toward models where size magnifies output without draining equal input. Healthcare shows the contrast. A doctor treating patients one by one cannot scale much. A biotech firm that develops a successful drug can serve millions with the same formula. Manufacturing has cost, but the effort of discovery yields orders of magnitude more impact than a single practitioner can. This is why drug development attracts capital despite risk. If it works, the scalability is massive. Scalability bias also explains digital media. A journalist writing for one newspaper reaches a fixed audience. The same journalist writing online can reach millions if the article spreads. A podcast episode can be downloaded endlessly without new work. Video channels grow in the same way. Each piece of content is built once, but consumed many times. The payoff is not tied to hours in a rigid way. However, scalability has limits. Some models look scalable, but hide costs. A software platform may scale users, but support requests may grow faster than expected. A marketplace may expand, but fraud and disputes may multiply. Scalability bias should not blind you to hidden friction. True scalability depends on systems that handle growth smoothly. If each new user adds as much pain as revenue, the model is not truly scalable. The bias shows up in how investors think. Venture capitalists prefer startups with scalable models. They know that service businesses tied to human labor cannot deliver exponential returns. They look for network effects, software, or platforms where each new customer improves margins. This is not because service businesses are weak, but because they cannot multiply value without multiplying effort. Capital flows to scalable ventures because upside is larger. On a personal level, scalability bias can guide career choices. If you pick a role where your output scales only with your hours, you face a ceiling. A lawyer billing by the hour or a surgeon performing operations can only do so much. High pay does not erase the linearity. By contrast, someone who builds a system, whether software, a process, or a product, can step back while the system produces results. Even within a profession, you can choose scalable paths. A lawyer writing a book or creating legal tech tools scales beyond billable hours. A teacher creating curriculum used nationwide scales beyond their own classroom. Technology amplifies scalability. Automation lets a single person manage tasks once handled by teams. Distribution through the internet means one person can reach millions. Infrastructure like cloud computing means scaling no longer requires building data centers. Scalability bias today is easier to follow because tools exist to support it. But the principle is old. Publishing, franchising, and manufacturing all relied on it long before digital platforms. Consider music. A singer performing live must repeat the work for each audience. Recording songs and distributing them scales far wider. The effort of recording once pays off across countless listeners. Streaming platforms magnify this further. Each new stream requires no new work. The same pattern applies to art, games, and films. The creative act is finite, but distribution makes it scalable. Scalability bias can be deceptive. A business may look scalable, but depend on hidden manual labor. Many startups scale only by adding armies of contractors behind the scenes. True scalability comes when systems, automation, and design handle growth without proportional expansion of labor. Testing for hidden fragility is as important as spotting the potential. Scalability bias also matters in policy. A government program that requires caseworkers for each person served cannot scale easily. A program that distributes vaccines or builds infrastructure scales better. The difference lies in how much each additional participant requires in new effort. In global challenges like climate change, scalable solutions like renewable energy tech or software for energy management attract more focus than labor-heavy fixes. At its core, scalability bias is a lens for evaluating leverage. It asks whether growth adds effort in equal measure or whether systems, networks, and technology absorb the weight. Ventures that scale win disproportionate outcomes. Ventures that do not remain constrained no matter how much effort is poured in. The choice between them shapes careers, investments, and entire industries. Goals are outcomes. Systems are the habits and processes that create those outcomes. A goal is running a marathon. A system is training 4 times a week. A goal is writing a book. A system is writing 500 words every morning. Goals point you in a direction, but systems move you forward each day. When you live by goals, progress feels like waiting for a finish line. When you live by systems, progress is built into the cycle of your actions. Fitness makes the difference clear. Someone sets a goal to lose 10 pounds. They reach it, then drift back into old habits. The weight returns. Another person builds a system of meal planning, daily walks, and strength training. Their health improves steadily because the process continues no matter what the scale says. The same pattern applies to work. An engineer might aim for a specific job. If they miss, they feel stuck. If they land it, the push is gone. Another engineer sets up a system of learning, networking, and building side projects. Whether or not the target role appears, the system keeps producing skills and opportunities. Progress compounds. Money follows the same rule. Many people set savings goals for the year. They cut spending for a while, then relax once they hit the target. By contrast, someone who automates monthly investments builds wealth without constant thought. Over decades, that system delivers more than any one-time push could. Writers know this well. The person who declares, "I'll finish a novel this year," may stall for months waiting for inspiration. The writer who commits to daily pages produces steady work. Some days are strong, others weak, but the pile grows. The book appears as a byproduct of the system. The same process then produces the next one. Entrepreneurs face the same divide. One founder makes funding the central goal. If the round closes, they celebrate. If not, momentum dies. Another founder sets up a system of testing ideas, speaking to customers, and shipping small versions. The process generates insights and products regardless of funding. Even failed attempts feed the pipeline. Systems also change how you see progress. Goals highlight what you lack. Systems let you measure success by whether you work the process today. Did you train, write, or invest? If yes, you win. This lowers stress and builds consistency. Students show this too. One aims for an A. They cram before exams, sometimes succeeding, sometimes not. Another builds a study system, daily reviews, weekly practice, group discussions. The grade is an outcome of the system, and the knowledge sticks longer. Teams function the same way. A sales team aiming for 100 deals in a quarter may burn out with short-term tactics. Another team runs a system of qualifying leads, reviewing calls, and refining scripts. The process improves each cycle. Deals rise naturally, without frantic sprints. Systems also prevent the emptiness that comes after achieving a goal. Athletes often struggle once they win a title. The target is gone. Without a system of training and recovery, they drift. Athletes who focus on routines sustain performance beyond milestones. Building systems means breaking goals into repeatable actions. It means reducing reliance on willpower by using habits and automation. In fitness, it's stocking healthy food and scheduling workouts. In writing, it's blocking time each morning. In money, it's automatic transfers. Systems succeed when the right action becomes the easy action. Feedback loops keep systems strong. You track workouts, words written, or calls made. The numbers are not about obsession, but about checking if the system runs. If results stall, you adjust the process, not abandon it. Small tweaks compound into growth. Picture two marathon runners. One sets a time goal, trains sporadically, obsesses about pace, and may or may not succeed. After the race, motivation collapses. The other builds a system, 5 runs a week, gradual mileage, cross-training. They finish strong, then keep running afterward. The system sustains them beyond the race. The same holds at work. An employee aims for a promotion within a year. If it doesn't come, they feel blocked. Another employee builds a system of consistent output, learning, and mentoring. If the promotion comes, they're ready. If not, they still have skills and options. The core truth is that goals are temporary. Systems are durable. Goals push you once. Systems pull you forward every day. With systems, success becomes habit. Each day you run the process, you earn a small win. Those wins accumulate into something far bigger than one achievement. This does not dismiss goals. Goals set direction, but systems carry you there and beyond. Over time, the system becomes part of who you are. You stop chasing goals and start becoming the person who produces results by default. Delegation is the act of spending your time only where it shifts outcomes. Leverage is what happens when people and tools handle the rest. The aim is not to stay busy, but to create room for high-value moves. Strategy, hiring, product quality, key customers, and capital allocation. Everything else can be passed on or automated. Start with a blunt review of your week. For each task, ask 2 questions. Does this choice affect outcomes a year from now? Can someone with the right playbook do it 80% as well? If the first answer is no and the second is yes, delegate. Then use dollar per hour logic. If your time is worth $200 per hour, you should not do $25 tasks. Work that repeats, has a clear definition of done, and is easy to check belongs off your plate. Picture a founder buried in support emails. They draft an FAQ, tag common issues, and build macros. They route billing and simple bugs to level 1 support with service-level agreements for response and resolution. They write a runbook for escalations, such as refunds above a set amount or enterprise outages. Each week, they review a simple report. That system returns 10 hours they can now spend on roadmap, recruiting, and customer calls. A sales leader sees a messy pipeline. Data entry eats hours. They ask operations to set required CRM fields and scripts to flag stale deals. A revenue operations analyst owns hygiene and reports exceptions weekly. The leader shifts time to pricing and enterprise deals. Win rates climb because they work on leverage points, not chores. An engineering manager spends mornings booking travel and juggling calendars. They hire an assistant with guardrails on budget, carriers, and schedules. A short playbook explains how to triage invites. The assistant protects design time. The manager spends those hours on architecture and talent growth. Throughput rises without extra hours. A content creator edits video, designs thumbnails, and writes descriptions. Growth stalls. They record one edit, turn it into a guide with assets, and give it to a contractor with a checklist. After 3 cycles, the editor runs the process. The creator shifts to research and narrative. Views rise because ideas, not edits, drive growth. Use a flow. Eliminate, automate, delegate, then do. Eliminate tasks that no longer matter. Automate with templates, scripts, or AI, then let a human check. Delegate when software cannot cover the job. Do only the tasks that require your judgment or carry asymmetric risk. When you hand off, write a brief. State the outcome. List 2 or 3 acceptance criteria. Add limits like budget or brand tone. Attach 1 good example and 1 common mistake. End with an escalation rule. This short document saves hours later. Train with a tight loop. Show once, watch once, then let them run a cycle and review. Check early outputs, then sample. Trust builds when quality holds. Set simple metrics. First pass yield shows how often the work meets the bar. Time to resolution shows speed. Defect rate shows where to tighten briefs or skills. Review metrics on a fixed cadence, not in every chat. Use retros to refine the system, not long manuals. Control access. Use least privilege permissions and role-based accounts. Store credentials in a vault, not a doc. If private data is touched, use an NDA and mark the flow. Skipping this step creates pain later. Do the math. 5 hours of $25 tasks each week equals 250 hours a year. If your time is worth $200 an hour, that costs $50,000 in opportunity. Hire an assistant 10 hours a week at $25. That costs $12,500 a year plus tools. In return, you free 500 hours. At your value rate, that is $100,000. The trade pays off if you protect that time and spend it on high-value moves. Avoid 2 traps. 1 is micromanagement, judging keystrokes instead of outcomes. If outputs fail, fix the brief, the example, or the person. The other is abdication, throwing tasks over the wall and hoping. Keep ownership. Delegation is handing off execution, not responsibility. Match tasks to skill. Juniors or contractors can handle repeatable work with standards. Specialists own work where errors are costly or context matters. For core systems, assign 1 clear owner. Document lightly. A 1-page playbook beats a heavy manual. Keep the latest version in one place. Use checklists for stress points. Update examples first when the process changes. Leverage grows with a small tool stack. Templates for emails and contracts. Forms for clean inputs. A task board with lanes. Backlog, in progress, review, done. Add only the tags that matter. A simple board beats a complex one no one trusts. Run a weekly leverage review. Look at your calendar, tasks, and metrics. Ask what you did that someone else could do with a brief. What software could do with a script. What high-value move you skipped because of noise. Turn each into one action. Cut, automate, or delegate. 30 minutes keeps drift away. Hire through tests. For an assistant, ask them to plan a trip or draft a vendor email. For an analyst, hand them messy data and a question. Score on clarity and accuracy. Pay for the test. Good people respect fair process. Delegation works when culture supports it. Share why the work matters. Show how it ties to goals. Praise outcomes in public. Give feedback in private. People grow when they know the bar and the path to reach it. Leverage expands when people feel safe to own more. Expect early errors. Treat them as signal. If small errors pile up, the system is weak. Tighten loops and fix causes. If one big error appears, ask if guardrails were clear. Add veto rules for risky steps. No shipping without a second set of eyes. No billing deploy without rollback. These prevent rare but costly hits. Revisit your own job. List the moves only you can make. Decide which still need your hand. Keep the few tied to your name or taste. Push the rest down. If you feel the urge to reclaim work, ask what failed in the system and fix that part. Do not steal the task back. That breaks trust and blocks growth. Delegation and leverage are not about escaping work. They are about trading work that decays for work that compounds. Free yourself from low-value tasks with clear briefs and tight loops. Invest your hours in the calls that shape the slope of the curve. Over time, the hours you recover become an engine that drives everything else. Capital allocation is the discipline of treating money not as a prize, but as fuel. Every dollar under your control can be used, saved, returned, or wasted. The decision is not about what looks good today, but about what creates the most value tomorrow. Leaders who master capital allocation often outperform those with more obvious advantages. They treat money like a resource that must be placed where it grows, compounds, or protects the enterprise. Those who fail at it can destroy even strong businesses by putting funds in the wrong places. Consider a simple case. A company earns $1 million after expenses. Management can choose to reinvest in the business, acquire another company, pay down debt, or return cash to shareholders through dividends or buybacks. Each choice has consequences. Reinvesting in new projects may create future growth if returns exceed the cost of capital. Acquiring another company may expand scale but risks overpaying. Paying debt reduces interest burden and risk, but may also limit future upside. Returning cash signals that management has no higher return use for it. The key is not the action itself, but the expected return on each option. The best managers weigh these with discipline, not emotion. An investor can use the same mindset. You may receive a bonus of $10,000. You can spend it, pay off debt, invest in skills, buy stocks, or hold it in cash. The choice should not be random. Paying off credit card debt yielding 20% is often the highest return. Investing in a course that raises your long-term earnings may yield even more. Buying stocks has expected returns, but also risk. Holding cash earns little but provides optionality. The framework is the same. Deploy money where it drives maximum long-term benefit. Warren Buffett built Berkshire Hathaway around capital allocation. The company owns diverse businesses, but its edge has often been how Buffett decides where to put cash. He redeploys profits from steady businesses like insurance into higher return opportunities like buying shares of strong companies or acquiring firms outright. He avoids areas he does not understand. When opportunities are weak, he lets cash build rather than forcing investments. This discipline compounds over decades. Many managers, by contrast, chase growth for its own sake and waste money on flashy acquisitions that add no value. Capital allocation also matters in startups. Early-stage founders raise capital from investors. Their task is to use that money to build product, find customers, and grow fast enough to justify future funding. Poor allocation, such as spending too much on marketing before product-market fit or overbuilding features customers do not need, leads to burn and failure. Smart allocation, such as focusing funds on hiring the right engineers or running disciplined experiments, creates traction. Startups often fail not from lack of ideas, but from poor capital allocation. Households face similar choices. Families that treat income as fuel for the future allocate differently from those who treat it only as present spending. A family may decide to allocate extra money toward education, down payments, or investments instead of constant consumption. Over time, these allocations create compounding wealth and stability. The discipline lies in asking at each point, what future does this dollar buy? Does it buy fleeting comfort or durable capacity? Capital allocation is not just about return. It also considers risk and flexibility. A project with high expected returns but high chance of ruin may be worse than a steady project with lower returns. Cash held back may look idle, but can let you act when others cannot. This optionality has value. For example, in a downturn, firms with strong balance sheets can buy assets cheaply because they saved capital earlier. Poor allocators, having stretched themselves, cannot act. Allocation is both about growth and about preserving the ability to seize future opportunities. An example helps. Imagine two manufacturing firms with identical profits. Firm A plows all cash into expanding factories even when demand is flat. Firm B holds some cash and buys competitors during recessions when valuations fall. 10 years later, Firm B owns more assets, stronger positions, and higher earnings, while Firm A sits on underused capacity. The difference was not in initial profits, but in how capital was allocated. Individuals can think the same way about careers. If you allocate time and money to learning, networking, and building skills, you build capacity that compounds. If you spend resources without thought, you stall. Treating your career like a portfolio forces you to allocate capital, financial, social, and intellectual, to the highest return opportunities. Capital allocation also reveals the cost of vanity. Many companies overspend on head offices, branding exercises, or acquisitions that boost size but not value. A famous example is the conglomerates of the 1960s that bought businesses in unrelated fields just to appear larger. Most of those failed because capital was spread too thin and invested without logic. True allocation is cold and rational. It asks not what looks impressive, but what yields the best risk-adjusted return. In practice, Capital allocation comes down to 3 steps: estimating return, comparing alternatives, and executing with discipline. Estimating return requires data, not wishful thinking. Comparing alternatives means you do not accept the first idea. You weigh it against other possible uses of the money. Execution means you resist pressure to act when no good option exists. Many managers fail on this last point. They feel they must always be doing something with cash. In reality, sometimes the best allocation is patience until better opportunities arise. The importance of opportunity cost cannot be overstated. Money spent one way cannot be spent another. If you use profits to buy back stock at inflated prices, that money cannot later fund expansion or acquisitions. If you invest in low-return projects, you miss the chance to invest in higher-return ones. Every dollar has an alternative use. Good allocators ask not just, "Is this good?" but "Is this the best available use?" An overlooked part of capital allocation is returning cash. Many managers see dividends or buybacks as failure. In truth, returning capital to shareholders can be the best allocation when the business has no high return opportunities. Forcing reinvestment into weak projects just to look busy destroys value. A company that admits it has no better use and gives money back shows discipline. The principle scales down to personal finance. Suppose you have spare cash. You want to invest in a side business, pay debt, or put it into index funds. Paying off debt with high interest is often the best first use. If debt is low cost, investing may be better. If a side business offers higher expected return, that may win. But each choice must be weighed not in isolation, but against the others. The right allocation changes with context. Capital allocation also forces clarity about goals. Are you seeking growth, safety, or flexibility? The best allocation for rapid expansion may be poor if your goal is stability. A family saving for college will allocate differently than a venture capitalist chasing unicorns. Knowing your aim shapes where money goes. Without clarity, allocation drifts and resources scatter. The discipline of capital allocation looks simple, but is rare. It demands clear thinking about return, risk, and opportunity cost. It requires resisting pressure from peers, markets, or ego. It rewards patience, humility, and a willingness to say no when options are weak. Done well, it compounds wealth and builds durable advantage. Done poorly, it erodes even the strongest base. Money is fuel. Where and how you deploy it decides whether you reach the future you want. Ownership is different from income. A salary pays you today, but equity builds wealth that can outlast your effort. People often chase higher pay because it feels tangible and immediate. They ignore ownership because it feels uncertain, distant, or harder to value. Yet when you look at the history of wealth creation, equity explains more fortunes than salary ever will. The people who built companies and held shares, even small ones, often ended up with outcomes many multiples of what wages could deliver. Ownership aligns your effort with long-term value, while salary only pays for time. Consider the employee who earns a high salary at a large firm. She makes $200,000 a year, spends most of it, and saves some. Her savings grow steadily, but slowly. Compare her with someone who joins a young company at a lower salary, but with equity. The firm later succeeds, and the equity turns into several $1 million. The difference is not intelligence or work ethic, but structure. One path trades time for money. The other path trades some short-term security for ownership in something that grows. Entrepreneurs illustrate this most clearly. A founder may earn little in the early years, sometimes less than what they could make at a corporate job. But by holding ownership, they build the chance at massive upside. When the venture works, their wealth comes not from salary, but from equity stakes. That is why ownership attracts those willing to take risk. Even when they raise money and dilute shares, their upside remains tied to equity. The incentive is long-term and aligned with growth. But ownership is not only for founders. Early employees at successful companies often become wealthy because of stock options. An engineer at Google in 2004 may have earned a modest salary but owned shares that later became worth millions. A salesperson at Salesforce or a designer at Airbnb may have seen similar results. These outcomes do not happen in every case, but the pattern repeats. Equity can outweigh salary many times over. Ownership matters more than income if wealth building is the goal. Freelancers and consultants face the same choice. They can bill by the hour or accept equity as part of payment. Most prefer cash because it feels certain. Yet in some cases, equity in a promising venture could eclipse years of fees. For example, a lawyer who accepted shares in a startup instead of full fees might later see those shares become worth far more than their hourly billing ever could. Not every bet pays off, but without equity, there is no chance of outsized gain. With equity, the downside is capped at the foregone cash, while the upside can be immense. Real estate is another form of ownership. Renting out property produces income, but the core wealth often comes from owning the asset as it appreciates. Tenants pay rent that covers costs, but over time, the property itself gains value. Contrast that with working for wages to pay rent forever. Ownership flips the dynamic. You build equity that compounds while others cover expenses. The same logic applies in business. Owning assets, not just renting them, builds leverage over time. Even within corporations, executives understand the power of ownership. Their compensation packages are structured around stock grants and options, not just salaries. They could demand higher cash pay, but they know equity ties them to long-term outcomes. If the business thrives, their wealth multiplies. If it fails, their equity shrinks, aligning their incentives with shareholders. The biggest fortunes in corporate history rarely come from salary. They come from stock. There are trade-offs. Equity carries risk. Salaries are predictable. Not every company succeeds. Not every property appreciates. But the lesson is not to abandon income. It is to prioritize ownership alongside income. Salary covers today's needs. Ownership builds tomorrow's freedom. You can manage risk by diversifying across multiple ownership stakes, saving from salary to buy assets, or combining steady income with selective bets on equity. The principle remains: do not rely only on wages. Think about the person who spends 30 years in a job with steady raises but no ownership. At retirement, they may have savings but no stake in growing assets. Compare them with someone who along the way built small ownership positions, buying into index funds, investing in properties, joining one or two startups with options. The second person may have started with the same salary but ends with far more because ownership multiplied their wealth. Consider a small business owner. Running a cafe may not pay more than being a manager at a chain, but the owner builds equity in the business. Over years, that equity can be sold or expanded into more locations. The manager collects wages and maybe a bonus, but the owner holds an appreciating asset. The value is not in the daily paycheck, but in the accumulation of equity. Ownership also changes mindset. When you hold equity, you think long-term. A salaried employee may focus only on next month's paycheck. An owner asks how decisions affect value over years. This perspective often leads to better choices. Owners treat costs differently, invest more wisely, and think about durability. They see money not as something to consume, but as something to grow. That mindset compounds just as much as the equity itself. The same principle applies to intellectual property. An author who writes a book receives royalties long after the work is done. A musician who records an album earns from streams and licenses. A software developer who builds a product can sell it repeatedly. Each of these examples shows how ownership of rights outpaces fees. A ghostwriter may earn a one-time payment, but the author who owns the rights collects for years. The owner builds wealth while the worker trades time for cash. In professional services, this distinction is sharp. A lawyer billing by the hour earns high fees but has no equity. A partner in a law firm owns a share of the practice. The partner earns not just from hours billed, but from the firm's overall profit and appreciation. The leap from worker to owner, even within the same field, explains much of the difference in wealth outcomes. Ownership magnifies effort into lasting value. For individuals outside business, ownership can still be built. Buying index funds is a form of owning the economy. Building a personal brand or audience is a form of owning distribution. Creating online courses, writing books, or developing software all create assets that scale beyond hours. These are modern forms of equity. They differ in risk and return, but they share the same advantage. Once created, they can produce ongoing value. A disciplined person can blend both worlds. Use salary to cover living and to acquire ownership. Each paycheck funds savings, investments, or small ventures. Over time, salary is the engine that feeds ownership. The danger is in consuming it all, leaving nothing to build. Salaries end when you stop working. Ownership continues. The choice between them is the choice between temporary income and compounding wealth. Ownership should be the focus if freedom is the goal. Salaries and fees matter for survival and security, but equity builds leverage over time. Whether through company stock, business stakes, property, or intellectual assets, the path to wealth runs through ownership. The earlier you recognize this, the more time compounding has to work in your favor. The habit of seeking equity where possible, even in small amounts, shifts you from trading time for money to building assets that endure.